We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com. Welcome to another edition of AVRant. I'm Tom Andrew, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AVRant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. I believe we're going to have one more episode next week for this year, because I don't think we're recording on Christmas week, right? I don't really intend to. I'm pretty busy. Going to be on our normal recording time. So I think this is it. This week and next week, and that'll be it for 2023. Tom is completely flummoxed into silence by that.
Flummoxed. I'm just waiting for it. We've got okay. So I just told Rob that before the podcast that there's people working on my house.
Yes.
We've got drywall in most of the places that are supposed to have drywall.
Okay.
We've got texture on top of that drywall in most of the places that are supposed to have texture on top of the drywall. We are, I think, waiting for baseboards to come in.
All right.
And I think they may be out shopping for them right now because they're supposed to be here at 8:30 in the morning, and it is now 10. And it is not. They are not here. So the dogs are in their crates because there's one dude who's a big baby. And, okay, I'm going to take that back. He went to somebody's house and their dog was less nice than it should have been. And now he no longer wants to be around dogs, which is fair enough.
Yeah.
And honestly, I would create at least one of my dogs because he's a big a-hole and he will run out the door at the first set, and he won't come back.
Okay.
There's no. He's got a girlfriend that's down the street.
Oh.
Like a block like 2 blocks away, and he runs directly over there, and he just goes over there and waits for them to let him in the backyard so he can go play with her. It's very annoying and it's very stressful. So I would have put him away, but the little dog, I would have left her out because she'd be less crazy. But now she's in the crate because she's going to be absolutely nuts.
Yes.
And so when they come, you will know because you will hear a dog going. I can't say the words.
Yes,
she's going to go nuts.
Potentially,
it's
Tom might have to disappear for a while.
It will do me no good. I'm not going to go out there and yell at her. And what she's going to do? She's going to keep doing it. So it doesn't make any difference.
There have never been foreign people in your house before. This is the first time it's ever occurred.
It's ever happened, and she needs to let me know that this great transgression is happening. We're being invaded, and the Saxons are coming, or whatever, the redcoats. Somebody is coming, and they need to be stopped.
There it is.
Anyway, so I'm a little stressed out about that. I got all kind of stuff going on today, but it won't affect the recording time of this podcast.
Okay.
So I can.
We got ourselves a packed show, and we're gonna try to not leave too many behind into the new year. So we'll see how it all goes.
You should have asked earlier. It's not my fault.
Right.
I will say I'm looking at it right now. Somebody sent my wife a gift, I think. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's like, you get a package and we don't know where it's from, but it was to her. It has her name on it.
All right.
And she opened it up, and it's like this cardigan, like knitted. It looks like a crocheted maybe cardigan thing that goes all the way to the floor.
Seems
nice. It's nice. Yeah. It's nice. No name. No nothing.
No return shipper address if they had been unable to deliver it.
No, it looks like I don't know. There was nothing on there that indicated who it was that sent it. And, I know some people are like, oh, I'm going to Secret Santa somebody. It's going to be... It's stressful. Don't do it. Just tell people that you sent them something.
Yeah.
Or at least after you know it arrived, give them a call and say, hey, did you get that cardigan I sent you?
Right, yeah.
Oh, I didn't know who that was from. That was really nice. Now, it's been a week. We have no idea where this dang thing came from. And now she's asking everybody, did you send this to me? Did you send this to me? Did you?
Yeah. Mysterious packages in the mail, just not really the greatest idea these days.
Yeah, it could be white powder coming from Colombia or white powder coming from some lab that trying to kill me.
Dear.
So what'd you watch?
Okay, we're hopping right into that. I watched a movie called Bottoms. Just came out this year, 2023. This is starring Rachel Sennett, sorry, mispronounced that, and Io Adebari, and Ruby Cruz, and Marshawn Lynch is in here too in a supporting role. And he actually does quite a good job.
Isn't Marshawn Lynch like a player of something?
He is an former NFL football player. I knew him from the Seattle Seahawks. He played for a couple other teams as well. But as an actor, I thought he did darn well in the supporting role. But yeah, this is a comedy that I laughed out loud multiple times in this movie. It was very funny, and yet in a little bit of a way, I almost didn't like how much I laughed at this movie. Not that there was anything for me to really criticize about it, but I was like it's very crude. It's got lots of horrible language in it, and normally that isn't totally up my alley, and yet it was just darn funny. So I couldn't help but laugh at it. It is absurdist comedy that is not like completely outlandish, not like superpowers or things turning into cartoons absurdity, but it's a little bit along the lines of like Anchorman style comedy. If you think of that sort of level of absurdity where, you know, bizarre things will happen from time to time. And then one of the running gags is like, this is all taking place at a high school. These are high school aged girls that we're following and going through their sexual awakenings and all that type of stuff is going on with them. Basically, the overarching plot is that they start a fight club to meet other girls. Is mostly what's going on as far as just the rote plot. But like, of course, there's the football stars at the high school and they just are never out of their football uniforms. Like, they always have their pads and their jerseys on, because we're basically seeing it absurdist through the eyes of the main characters, and they just like pigeonhole everybody into their roles, and so we visually see them that way. And like, the football announcer at the games is just like completely unhinged. And it is quite funny because he's like narrating everything that's going on, and he's just completely out of his mind. And we never actually see who's doing that. But I wanted to say, like, Rachel Sennett, she is the lead in this movie, and she does an excellent job in what is really kind of a thankless comedy role, because she is an angry person. She is a very sarcastic person, but she never gets the punchline. She's never the reason that we're laughing in this comedy. She's entirely the setup and the sounding board and like what everybody else is reacting off of. So that's a difficult role to play. But if she doesn't nail it, if she doesn't play that role really well, nobody else's deadpan reaction or wide-eyed reaction or naive reaction, none of that works if she, as the central character, doesn't play that angry, not funny role extremely well. So I think it's because basically what I'm getting at is nobody's going to come out of this movie saying she was their favorite character, right? You're going to love a bunch of the other characters for how funny they were, and she gets the sort of thankless role of everyone reacting to her and with the funny reactions and never getting to deliver the punchline. But she does an excellent job in this. Io, I forget how she pronounces her name. Io, I think. Io?
It's probably
Adebari.
Io, yeah.
I think it's Io Adebari. She is fantastic in this movie. The delivery that she has, she's quite deadpan through a lot of stuff, and her whole comedy bit is that she just sort of keeps on talking until she gets herself into a horrible, inextricable lying situation, and then just tries to keep talking through it.
I've known people like that in high school.
Until she gets out the other side, and her delivery of her lines is absolutely fantastic. I don't know how many takes they did, how much ad-libbing there was, but like, it's not that everything she's saying is actually in transcript particularly funny. It is all in the way that she delivers it, and busting a gut at a ton of her scenes. And then Ruby Cruz playing sort of the third, much more supporting role for her, but like, her just completely wide-eyed, doesn't understand sarcasm, naivete that she delivers works so darn well. So yeah, I mean, a ton of this, I couldn't help but just burst out laughing at it, even though quite a bit of the subject matter wasn't necessarily stuff that I like or enjoy or wanted to enjoy this much, and yet I can't help but give it a hearty thumbs up because it's just absolutely hilarious. It's a hilarious movie. It's a tight 90 minutes, doesn't overstay its welcome, moves along. Honestly, the weakest part of this movie is when they dip for one scene into some just actual drama, not playing stuff for laughs, and I'm like, nope, that scene didn't quite work. Everything else was hilarious and worked really well. So yeah, there you go. Gets a thumbs up from me, even though I didn't really like what was going on.
Yeah, sounds like something I would like.
Yeah, I think you'd get a kick out of it.
Yeah, I'm finished the whatever most recent season that is on Hulu of what's his name?
Welcome to Wrexham. Is that what we're?
No, Rick and Morty was the most recent
Rick and Morty.
one.
Okay.
This season was a little more scattershot for me than some of the other ones, which I felt were much funnier. But this one was fine. It was just, I don't know. It wasn't. It didn't quite hit as good for me this one.
Okay.
I don't know why. It could have been my mental state. Could have been a lot of other things. Anyway,
and there's ups and downs as the seasons go. That's
sure.
not unusual.
I did finish with the family Wrexham season 1 just the other night, which I thought it's just excellent. It's just really really
great.
Really
I mean,
well done.
It's a documentary, so anytime you're wondering about because I mean, everybody who's shown in that show, they feel like a character because they're sort of presented that way, but they're real people doing real things.
Yes.
So it's like it's not a plot. You can't criticize the writing of the plot because there isn't one. It's an actual documentary.
I will say that I think my favorite scenes, my favorite episodes are the ones that focus more on Ryan and Rob than
the townspeople.
The townspeople. And it's not that I don't like the townspeople or whatever. It's just, it gets to the point where you're like, how can you possibly care this much about, I don't love my children this much. What is wrong with you people?
Right, yes.
At some point you just get to the point you're like, are you real? Are you being for real? And they are. They absolutely are. And they don't shy away too much, but they probably more than they could have. I mean, they had a whole episode about the hooliganism and that whole thing, which of course is ludicrous from my standpoint. From where I stand,
it was pretty clear in that show that they didn't want soccer hooliganism to be a large part of the show because they basically took one episode, made that the focus of that episode, and then mostly ignored it in all the other episodes.
Right.
And I'm like, I don't know. I think there's a little bit more hooliganism going on than you wanted to show.
You want to let on, yes, right. And then the whole town's behind us. La la la. I'm like, are they though? Are they? But I for the most part though, I really did like the show, and it's kind of a shame that it's so far in the past for us because
season 2 is out now, so
I already know how a lot of things end up. Of course, my family doesn't, and because they don't pay attention to such things, and so they were gripped the last episode, wondering whether or not they were gonna the last episode of the first season, whether or not they can get promoted, how the games were gonna go and stuff like that. So I mean we're excited to watch the second season. So we'll start that. God knows when. It depends on how things go around here.
And since we do know the real life history of how things have played out and what season 2 we're going to be covering, I'm like, that's like you wrote that plot. It really is.
Yes. Right. So overall, if you're looking for something that's a little lighthearted, but also a little serious and has some emotional impact and a lot of comedy, and it's a little interesting. One of the things that really kind of rang home for me, at least, is the fact that Wrexham is such a town that it's one of those many towns in America where there was a big industry there and it is no longer there anymore. And many of the towns that they're quote unquote fighting or playing against or whatever are in the same sort of situation where it's like they used to be this and now they're just whatever's left after that industry moved on or died or whatever. And you see how people need something to distract them from how maybe bleak life can be. And
I mean, during economic downturns, that is certainly going to happen.
And that's it rings home to me, at least, or rings true to me. This idea that it's very easy when you're in whatever situation you're in to think that is it. That is all there is. No matter where you are, whether you're affluent or not affluent, whether you're living in a big city or in a rural town, that you get myopic about your entire life. And when you do that, you end up feeling like the entire world is the same as you and in the same sort of condition.
Yeah,
therefore,
natural.
Everybody else must care about soccer as much as you care about soccer, which, I'm watching this going, you people are all nuts. But I felt that way. I feel that way about NFL and about everything else too.
Sure.
I don't really care about any of that stuff. And I've moved around so much. Some people grew up their whole entire lives, in near San Francisco. So the 49ers or Oakland Raiders or whatever is, they're diehard fans forever. And if they move, they're always going to still be diehard fans of that town. And I've just never been that way. So it's always been kind of alien to me. But it is kind of like it's always good to experience or to get an idea of how other people live, so that it puts your own life in perspective, no matter what your life is like.
Yep, good documentaries do that. So
yeah, and so far I'm liking it. So
nice,
whatever. It's also really funny that the guy they hired to like be their liaison there is an actor, and you see him in other stuff every once in a while. My wife's like, I know that guy from somewhere.
He's a writer in quite a few things.
Yeah. She's like, I know that guy from somewhere. I'm like, yeah, that's the guy from Wrexham. So, why is he in this movie? I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. He's just here. All right, this is AVRant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. Get your question answered. All you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. Go to our website, find our podcast as well as our show notes, and in those show notes you will find our Flickr albums so that you can follow along with the pictures of which we will be speaking as we are going through this. So if you're confused by my description, it's your own dang fault. Click on the link. Or you can find us on Facebook.com/AVRant podcast or YouTube.com/AVRant. If you go to YouTube and you follow and you watch instead of listen to the podcast, or I guess it's both really, you will see the pictures come up because Rob will show them on the screen. Those are our recording sessions. Our lips may not be synced, but who cares?
Yeah, I mean, certainly right now, Tom's lip sync is fantastic. No errors whatsoever.
Perfect. I wish my logo would like pulsate out of sync of my lips so that it could be all.
I am not going to animate that by hand.
I know.
That is not going to happen.
We do want to thank our list. Oh wait, contact us directly. You can contact Rob at avrant.com. His other social media is at First Reflect. I'm Tom at avrant.com. I don't have any other social media, so don't look for me. I am a ghost in the machine. Excuse me. We want to thank our listeners of the week. We want to thank Andrew and Jeff. They went to avrant.com, clicked on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link, and so that sent them to a PayPal donation site to which they donated some money. So thank you very much, Andrew. Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Jeff. We appreciate your financial support via PayPal.
If you'd like to support us monthly, every month, without having to think about it, you can go to patreon.com/AVRant podcast, where you can sign up to be a monthly contributor. And we want to thank our 134 patrons, including Ken. Thank you very much to our patrons.
That's right. One more time, it is patreon.com/AVRant podcast. If you'd like to sign up to make an automatic monthly donation, $1 per month is the minimum. And we'd like to thank our 134 patrons, including Ken.
We also got some notes of gratitude for keeping the podcast going through the harshest Florida winter that we've had. I have to put on socks today. It sucks.
Yeah, if the doggy runs out, it's not into snow. We had some snow here.
That is true. That is true.
Had some snow in my neighborhood. It went away pretty quickly, but we had some.
There you go. Rob was happy that day. He was finally able to.
It does feel nicer. It feels Christmassier when there's some snow around.
Down here, it's so stupid. Because, like, today it was 52 degrees. I don't know what that is in Celsius off the top of my head, but it's cold. Probably single digits. So it was pretty cold. Tomorrow it's going to be 10 degrees warmer in the morning.
Oh,
it's just like, okay. It's like we were cold. We're cold for like 2 mornings, and we're like, oh my God, I can't stand it. And then it gets warm again, and we're like, oh, the humidity.
It's still
people.
Very much in the pluses, which is not cold at all.
Rob doesn't think it's cold
no.
until you don't have to put your leftover pizza away. You just leave it on the counter.
To me, it's not cold until I no longer feel like wearing shorts, and that happens at -10 Celsius. -10 Celsius, it's time to put some long pants on.
It is so funny, you stupid Canadians, because you come down here to Florida and you talk like that, and then if you move down here, which some of you do,
oh sure,
you very quickly get to the point where you're like,
people acclimate. That's what we do.
So quickly.
Yep.
I mean, I'm the same way. I used to barely ever wear long pants, and now
I mean, look, I wouldn't survive in like a Winnipeg winter. I'm not cut out for that. I'm cut out for the very mild West Coast weather.
Mild. You haven't seen mild till you come down here. Anyways, there are horrible things going on in the world, and we got some notes of gratitude for keeping the podcast going through all that.
Yep.
From Greg, Art, Ken, Mohsen, Terry, Brandon, Chris, Julian, Vince, Rob, not this Rob, different Rob, Jeff, and Frank and Nina. Frank and Nina are one person. They say they're longtime listeners and they love our sensible advice. You're welcome, Frank and Nina, and thanks to all of you for thanking us.
Yep, I'll say the names one more time. Greg, Art, Ken, Mohsen, Terry, Brandon, Chris, Julian, Vince, Rob, Jeff, Frank, and Nina. Thank you all very much for your notes of gratitude and encouragement. They are definitely appreciated. And a big, big thank you to everybody who continues to listen and send in your questions.
So in the news, it happened shortly after we finished recording last week, so you're likely already seen, I did not see, that the SAG-AFTRA voted to ratify their new 3-year contract, so the actors' strike is officially over. I thought it was already over, that people were already doing things.
Right, well, yeah, they had stopped picketing, they had gone back to work, but the contract had not been ratified, so it was not out of the realm of possibility to have gone back on to strike. But now it is done, it is officially over, the next 3 years, that's it, contract signed.
So there was a 78.33% of members who voted to choose to ratify the new contract, which runs through June 30th, 2026. It was noted that voter turnout was significantly higher than the ratification votes in 2020 and 2017, but it was still only 38.15% of SAG-AFTRA's 160,000 plus members who actually cast their votes. Yeah. So those are probably the ones that actually work. The rest of them are like, well...
It's always bizarre to me how what a small percentage of voters who are allowed to vote don't actually, or who do, a small percentage who do actually vote. The large percentage, I mean, this goes across most voting that we see, greater than 50% is like a real rarity, right? So yeah, imagine that, just a little more than a third of the actual members get to decide what happens, and then it's only, little more than 75% of them who did vote yes. So like I predicted, the ratification vote was not close to the same overwhelming percentage as the writers. When the writers voted to ratify, it was, like 97 or 98% or something of those who voted yes for that. This was not quite as enthusiastic from the SAG-AFTRA members, but still passed quite easily. They only need 50% plus one. So 78.33% of people who voted in favor. That means they got a new contract until 2026. So there you go. The movie industry is back to work for sure. Congratulations on them on, holding out and getting a deal that the majority felt was something they could actually work with. But yeah, there are still some things in there about AI and that's a little bit vague or a little bit not necessarily great for people in perpetuity and all that type of stuff. So we'll see how it goes. A lot of the criticisms in the current contract were basically saying some of this depends on goodwill, good actor, like people acting in good faith.
That happens.
Yeah, when that isn't spelled out in writing, you can to see how that goes sometimes. But nevertheless, we've got it. There it is. Writers and actors are back to work. We'll see now if the animation and special effects industries decide to fully unionize and strike themselves, because they more than deserve it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Rob mentioned it last week in passing, but now we have pricing for using our video. So, this is so stupid.
I can't help it. That's what they've named themselves.
It's just dumb. Software on your Zappiti player, if you still have one. It's €5.99 a month or €50 a year. Do you think it's going to last a year? But anyways.
Well, there's something about it.
And it's compatible with the last 2 generations of Zappiti players, so the Neo, Reference, and Signature, and then all of the 4K HDR models that preceded those. You can play 4 simultaneous HD streams or 2 simultaneous Ultra HD streams, and they've announced Mac and PC versions of the software, as well as a standalone mode that quote, even if our video cloud is no longer available, or if one day our Evolution stops its services for one reason or another, the application will still continue to work as long as TMDB is accessible, end quote. What the hell is TMDB?
The movie database. Yeah, that's where all the poster art and metadata information, everything is pulled down from. So yeah, the fact that they put up there, like, if we stop working for one reason or another, like perhaps getting sued out of existence for still having a dedicated ripping machine with a disk drive in it and software to rip your disks, maybe if they get sued out of existence just like Zappiti did, but this is all we're planning to release, the standalone version. That doesn't exist yet, nor do the Mac and PC versions. They don't exist right this minute. But if you have a Zappiti player, it's sitting there doing nothing at this point, and you're willing to pay a monthly
pay $50
or yearly
a year for it to continue to do nothing.
Yeah, that's what's going on there. But there you go. That's the update for us Zappiti owners. I count myself among them. I have a Zappiti Mini. But yeah, that's what you got to do now to get that thing working again.
Whatever. Comments. Rob, not this Rob, different Rob, recalled us mentioning at some point that we wondered if using corner bread instead of... Bead, sorry. I was like, bread? What the hell are we talking about? Corner bead instead of wood might work for creating inexpensive DIY absorption panel frames. He wanted to build some cloud panels for a ceiling and wanted to make them as lightweight as possible, but still with nice, straight, clean edges. So he figured he'd give it a try. The corner bead was cheap. He went with the plastic kind, easy to cut with a pair of shears. It was low risk experiment, and he'd like to share the results. He just used the plastic corner bead, spray adhesive, and 1-inch staples. The edges and corners came out nice and straight, and the panels are basically as light as the vat of insulation itself. It was cheaper and fairly effortless, so he gives it a thumbs up. For hanging the panels on the ceiling, he got some 6-inch spikes. Jeez. That you could bend with pliers to make the spikes into hooks that seemed to hold the insulation just fine with the 4 spikes, one near each corner. I'm trying to see this, but I don't. So a corner bead was a good idea. It can definitely work, and he's happy with how it all turned out. There's pictures, again, if you wanted to see this. So the corner bead is like what you put in when you're doing drywall, basically.
That's right, yeah. It's what you put over the drywall before you mud, and then you mud over this and that, the drywall and this corner bead, to give you your nice, somewhat hardened edges with no gaps, where the drywall piece meets another drywall piece. This seams all of that together nicely.
So he's putting this flush to the ceiling. He's not...
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, he's not trying to hang it. So basically I don't understand the 6-inch spike with the hook part of it, though.
So we're not seeing it hooked. We're just seeing it straight there. So he bent that with pliers to like a little bit more than a 90-degree angle, so then digs that into the insulation, and that's just holding it. I don't know if he's using string or something or other on the ceiling itself to go into the flat part of the 4 hooks that he's inserted in there. But that's what's holding it to the ceiling, and then the corner bead is just acting as basically hardened edges and corners for the insulation.
So those aren't nails? Those are nails. Those are not nails?
The silver parts? The 4 silver parts?
Yeah, the thing that's sticking through the square bit.
Yeah, it's some kind of 6-inch long nail spike thing.
Oh, and he's just not nailing that directly into the ceiling. He's hanging off the end of that thing.
Correct.
Okay, so it's not flush. It's a little bit less than it's going to be hanging down. I get it.
Yeah.
I get it now. If you don't understand what we're talking about, then you should be looking at the pictures.
Yes.
Look,
but yeah,
AVRant.com.
This idea came up like when we were still like in the pandemic or just coming out of the pandemic, and every form of like lumber was crazy overpriced for a while there, and people were saying like, I want to make some DIY panels, but just getting like 1x4s or 2x4s is like prohibitively expensive. And I wondered aloud at that time, I'm like, would corner bead work? Like, could you get some metal or plastic?
So how is he
bead?
wrapping them? Is he putting corner bead on both sides and then wrapping it and then stapling it?
As far as I know, what he said he was doing, we don't see any pictures with the finished fabric, but he said, he spray adhesived onto the corner bead to just sort of be tacky for the fabric to have a little bit of something to grab onto, and then just use staples through the fabric into the corner bead to hold it on the back side. So that's what he did as far as the edges go. And creates a nice straight square edge. That's all we really want from our frame. Yeah, great.
I feel like this would be very delicate to try to wrap that fabric around and keep it straight and taut. But whatever, if you got it to work, you got it to work. Good for him. Make a video. Let's get to the questions here. Nathan asks, is it okay to drive a pair of headphones directly from a variable line level output? As an experiment, he took an old Sonos Connect that he had on hand and plugged a simple male RCA to female stereo 3.5 millimeter cable adapter cable into it. Then he plugged a pair of Drop plus Sennheiser HD58X headphones into that that 3.5 millimeter jack. The Sonos Connect RCA outputs are variable, so he raised and lowered the volume setting directly on the Sonos Connect, and right around the midpoint it seemed to sound perfectly pleasing. So it functioned, but is it okay? Is there something about impedance mismatching, or too little voltage, or too little current, or too high distortion, or whatever that makes this a bad idea? I don't know.
Okay, so there is a chance that you're going to create excessive heat inside of your Sonos Connect. So the line level output, being variable, you are varying the voltage somewhat, but the line level output of a preamplifier or the preamp output of basically any preamplification device, it's not exactly fixed current, but it's pretty close. It's pretty close to fixed current. What you're typically expecting, because normally the preamplifier output of a device like the Sonos Connect, or just the preamp outputs on your AV receiver, for example, those are going to be going into the regular input jacks of an amplifier, and most audio amplifiers have an input impedance somewhere in the range of 25 to 30 kiloohms. So it's a really, really high input impedance on the amplifier side of things, which means there's exceedingly little current going between the amplifier and the preamplifier. It's pretty much all just the voltage that's determining what's going on. So you're varying the voltage to vary the amplitude of the signal. The current more or less stays the same. And then the amplifier does what it's supposed to do, which is it supplies the current. It supplies the amperage to amplify the signal. So it's almost current invariable setup. It's the variable voltage that's going on from the preamplifier side. So if we go over to your headphones, I looked those up, and they're 150 ohm headphones, which is higher impedance than a lot of other headphones, but of course 150 ohms compared to 25 kiloohms, 25,000 ohms versus 150 ohms means that a whole lot more current is going to be sent into those headphones versus a typical amplifier input. You're basically demanding of that preamplifier output to supply considerably more current than it's normally going to do going into a typical amplifier. So of course, if you keep the volume level low, if you keep that voltage signal low and it's responding to that 150 ohm impedance instead of 25 kilo ohm impedance, and it's able to supply that current, then yes, it'll function. You will hear sound. But when it's supplying that much more amperage, that much more current than is typical, then you're running the risk of it heating up. That's the most likely thing that's going to happen there. So that's why we don't normally use just a line level output, a variable line level output as a headphone amplifier. It's why we have dedicated headphone amplifiers to take that same line level signal and amplify it, not nearly as much as a speaker amplifier. We're typically talking milliwatts of power into headphones, not even a single watt, but nevertheless, that headphone amplifier is designed to vary the current in response to the voltage, as opposed to more or less holding the current steady like a line level output does. So will you break anything? Not necessarily. If you were using fairly standard like 32 ohm headphones, I would think that this wouldn't work very well at all. It just likely wouldn't get loud enough to be satisfying, and you'd stop the experiment.
That's what I would expect from a line level output, is that it won't have enough power to drive the headphones.
But in either case, you are running. I bet if you touch the back of that Sonos Connect near those preamp outputs, they're getting pretty toasty. That would be what I would suspect. So it wouldn't be my advice to do this. It's most likely generating more heat than you really want to. So yeah, that would be my answer to that.
Okay. Mike. It's not been a very good year for Mike's displays. He just replaced his JVC RS540 projector this past summer with a new model after the RS540 started having problems, and now his Panasonic Plasma is acting up. Dude, you still have a Panasonic Plasma, and you're complaining that it's acting up? I would expect it to. My parents are still rocking a Plasma right now. I keep talking about the fact that they're going to have to get a new TV pretty soon, and they're like, why? I'm like, it's been like over a decade since you bought this thing. It's still doing fine. Don't get me wrong, but I'm just shocked. Anyways, he doesn't have a bunch of spare cash lying around at the moment, so he's hoping we'll be able to tell him that this is something that could be repaired. It can't be. I'm just going to tell you right now, I can't make it. It's
well,
done.
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Rather than having to buy a whole new TV. So it's over 10 years old, but the image still looked great up until the point where I was up to it. A fully black screen still appears deep black, and the logo appears, and it looks perfectly fine. So to his mind, this indicates the plasma itself is working properly. Really?
The panel itself.
We'll see. Yeah. But once the TV gets to any of its inputs, there is no correct image, and there are crazy horizontal lines going across the screen. We can't see it via the images, but there are flickering and scrolling randomly all over the place, and there should be a normal TV image on the screen, but instead it's just various shades of blue with some blotches of black that randomly appear. So we think this might be a board replacement. That wouldn't be too bad, or is he going to have to figure out a way to afford a whole new TV? Sounds like you have a projector, my man. Let's just live with that for a while. Yeah, this is some board in there, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, God something to do with the inputs.
It's not me.
Something to do with the inputs for sure. Yeah, I mean, obviously you will be past the manufacturer's warranty period, 10 years on. I would still not hesitate whatsoever to contact Panasonic. Panasonic is pretty darn good on the customer service side of things. Really? So I would not hesitate to contact them about this. I mean, since, you get that image of the, Smart Viera logo that comes up there and looks perfectly fine and isn't this crazy thing, then, this is something to do with, the inputs that's going on here. Something between the inputs and getting to the actual panel to display things is getting messed up. That is the sort of thing where there might still be parts available. It might be replaceable. I can't guarantee that in any way. They're going to charge you some amount of money just to open it and diagnose it, and might end up telling you after that diagnosis that either it isn't fixable, the parts don't exist anymore, or the cost of the repair is going to be as much as buying a replacement TV. All of these things are possible. I don't have fantastic news to give you because I'm not able to diagnose it just from the images as to exactly what's going on. But this does seem like the sort of thing that could be, the HDMI board is what's malfunctioning, and that is a part that is at least potentially replaceable. So I would definitely get in touch with Panasonic because the customer service call or email, that's free. You might be waiting a couple of weeks to get a response from them. Sure. Try to be a little bit patient with that, but it's certainly worth your while to at least do that. That all said, I'm reading between the lines that he's probably thinking if I'm going to replace a plasma, I want to do so with an OLED, and that makes sense. Yeah. But let's not overlook the fact that, the Panasonic plasmas were great TVs, but they still didn't have black levels that are as black as an OLED. That is obviously why we're saying, okay, if I'm going to replace a plasma, I'd love to actually have an upgrade and do something that's still pixel perfect and genuinely true black levels. But it's you can get a very capable, very nice looking, not crazy expensive Hisense or TCL mini LED backlit full array local dimming LCD that honestly is pretty darn close to on par with the performance of your plasma, maybe not quite equaling an OLED, but is really close to that plasma performance and is 4K resolution and HDR capable, things that your Panasonic plasma were not. So I wouldn't say it's OLED or bust, because especially if you're keeping a similar size, I'm thinking from the pictures he sent, that looks like a 50-inch, right? It doesn't look huge. Yeah. He's his feet are there for scale. We don't know the size of his feet and shoes, but that doesn't look like a 60-inch or a 70-inch or something. It looks like a 50-inch. So, I mean, going for a 55-inch, Hisense U7K or something like that, remarkably affordable, a remarkably good-looking TV, that might be the way to come at this. There's every chance that that's actually going to be less expensive than the repair cost. So I wouldn't dismiss that as an option.
Yeah, we'll see. Greg has a friend who wants to set up an outdoor projection screen in his pool area on the cheap. The projector won't be staying outside on a permanent basis, which is good because that would be expensive. Not only that, it'd also be replaced often. Greg found a Panasonic PT-FW530U classroom projector for a mere $160. It's a 3 LCD projector with a 1280 by 800 resolution, although it can accept signals up to 1080p 60, and 4500 lumen light output. Also has a 1.8 times zoom range, and both horizontal and vertical lens shift, all manual, of course. Clearly, it's not a dedicated home theater project, but Greg has seen it in action. It's very bright and produces a clear image, which is all his friend really wants. For the price, only alternatives seem to be the extremely small portable LED projectors from Chinese brand names no one's ever heard of. So this has got to be better than those, right?
It's certainly brighter. There's no question about that.
I mean, those little ones are not very bright.
They are not.
They're plenty bright enough for what they're supposed to be used for, which is extremely close projection on in like an office space to do the presentation, and you're trying to blow something up to the size of like 50 inches or something like that.
Sure.
Maybe 60 inches, not like an outdoor projector.
Yeah.
What should he know about this Panasonic FW530 when it comes to setting it up by the pool for outdoor movie nights? So generally speaking, when you are setting up these sorts of things, you are mostly, and honestly, my dude, like picture quality is not even on the top 10 things you worry about.
Right.
It's brightness, brightness, and that's pretty much the top 3 that you care about.
And the reason has that.
Yeah. So, I mean, most of the times I see these things set up, and it is super ramshackle, makeshift, whatever, like on top of milk crates or like, foldable tables that they just kind of bring outside and that sort of thing onto a wall of a house or a sheet strung up between trees, so, the big things for me would be just a stable platform upon which to put this thing, and then setting up some chairs around it so that people have to literally walk through other stuff to knock this thing over.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
And I mean, to that end, this is a nice choice on that side because it does have the quite large zoom range and vertical and horizontal lens shift. That's a big help.
That's a big help,
in terms of not having to be ultra precise in the physical placement of the chassis of the projector. You can kind of plunk it down anywhere within that range and then square up the image relatively easily. That's a very nice thing to have, and not something you're going to find in other sub $500 projectors, let alone at $160 that you managed to find this thing. So in that way, you did great. I will say, Epson, it is an LCD projector. They mention right there, I mean, this was sort of intended for classrooms. It's meant to be a little bit more rugged than like a dedicated home theater projector. So they say that it is dust resistant, but any of the 3 LCD projectors like this one is, there is an air filter. There is air that makes its way through the light path of this projector. So for outdoor settings, it's, often I'll point to a DLP instead, but you're not going to find a similarly capable DLP projector for $160. So I have no problems there. It's just be aware that there is an air filter, and it would be a good idea to clean that air filter on a fairly regular basis. You can let your friend know that. He's probably not going to do it. Most people with air filters in their projectors never clean that air filter, but you can. It is there, it is cleanable, and it is replaceable, and it would be a good idea to do so because there is an air filter and there is air moving through the light path of this projector. So that's one thing to just be aware of. You asked for anything to be aware of with this. The other one is the throw range of this projector. It is not a short throw projector. It is definitely not an ultra short throw projector. So if we look at a 120-inch image, which is a pretty standard size for doing outdoors and that, the lens of this projector will need to be basically from 10.5 to 20 feet away. That's more 10.6 feet to 19.8 feet is the very precise, but it's the lens of the projector is going to be that distance away. So that can be a consideration just in terms of, are people going to be walking in front, in between the projector and the screen, that type of thing. It's going to need to be at least 10.5 feet away from the screen. You can't snug it right up to the screen if that was something you wanted to do. But it can be nice and far away with that 1.8 times zoom range. It can be nice and far away and still function. It's just, of course, then people could be walking between the screen and the projector. So the only other thing is on the audio side of things, because I'm not exactly sure where you're intending to plug in your sources and what you're going to be using or what your friend is going to be using as the sound system. But this one, you can take... just like from the HDMI input that I would assume you're using for video on this, you can take just a stereo PCM signal, so no Dolby Digital, no surround sound of any kind, but just stereo PCM, and it will output that sound. And you might be saying, oh, there's a red and white plugs on the back of that. Is that just where the sound comes out? No, those are actually inputs. There is a single RCA jack output, and it is mono. It down mixes the stereo to mono to output mono sound. Like I say, classroom projector. It wasn't meant for anything fancy. So chances are you're going to want to separate the audio from the video in whatever source you're using. So that's just another little complication in this, in that maybe you're just going to hook up a sound bar so you can plug the source into the sound bar, and then the sound bar can pass the video through to the projector. That's not out of the question to do in a situation like this. Or maybe you're going to have, use a device like a Amazon Fire TV Cube that can send the audio wirelessly to some Amazon speakers and then just pass the video only to the projector. There's multiple ways you can do it, but it's just to be aware that this is something the projector is not going to be outputting stereo sound as a pass-through from the projector itself. So you probably don't want to plug the source directly into the projector for the audio side of things. Then the other thing to consider is didn't mention what's going to be done for the screen. Maybe there's already a plan in place. Maybe it's just going to get projected onto a white wall. But just in case those were considerations, outdoor screens that you can use that are quite easy to fold up and move away. Carl's Place is, of course, one of the places we go for just projector screen material. They actually have outdoor projector screen kits where like 120 inches is the smallest size that they do. So they're flexi white, which comes with a nice black border around the screen, and you just attach it to the frame with bungee cables. So it's fairly easy to pack up and fairly easy to set up. Only $141 for the 120-inch size. Now, that comes with the hardware to make the frame, the freestanding frame, but you actually have to supply your own pipes. It's half-inch pipes that you use to do that. So there's added cost to that, which means that if you just want an all-in-one that you can buy, I quite like from Elite Screens, they have their pop-up cinema screens. These really are just like all in one, come in a case. They kind of, if you have one of those sunshades that you put over your windshield, sometimes you just fold it into a circle, and that's basically what these screens do. The thing is, the largest size of the pop-up screens from Elites is 92 inches, so considerably smaller. That's the largest that the pop-up ones do, and it's $150 for that 92-inch size. So also at Elite Screens, they have their Yardmaster series, Yardmaster 2. Again, I'm just sort of sticking with 120 inches as an easy size. That's, $233.50. So a bit more expensive than the other ones, but when you consider you'd have to buy pipes for the Carl's Place kit, certainly not outlandish for the price. This is a nice, stable, freestanding frame, works really well, collapses down quite easily, quite easy to pack away. So the price is not exorbitant, and I quite like those Yardmaster 2 series, available in a wide variety of screen sizes too. So I'm using 120 inches as an example, but there's other screen sizes. And then if you're just like, no, it's got to be as cheap as I possibly can, Elite does have their Yardmaster Lite series. It is only available in a 125-inch size. There are no other sizes available, but it's only $111.50 for that size of screen. The thing is, these are just stick legs, and you have to secure those feet to the ground with something. Like they say, oh yeah, you can just put sandbags over there and that might be enough, but it's like, this is not truly freestanding all on its own. Not like the Yardmaster 2, that is truly freestanding. You don't really need anything else there. It can work all on its own, but the Yardmaster Lite, it's like those are just some stick skinny legs, and you need to secure those to the ground with something. But the price can't be beat. 125-inch size is probably about what you need. So those are great options for outdoor screens to go along with your projector.
So the one thing I'll say, and if I'm understanding you correctly, Rob, you can plug in HDMI and it will output mono, right?
It'll output mono analog sound, yes.
Yeah. So if you're looking to just sort of like as cheap as humanly possible, if you've already got something like one of those stupid karaoke setups or something, sure, with a a lot of them come with one big powered speaker. Yep. You could just output that mono to that thing, and then you'd be done. Yep. No one cares about stereo sound outside anyways. So it's all gonna, don't even, if it were me and I had a single speaker like that available, that's exactly what I would do.
Oh yeah. It's just it is a slight limitation to be aware of, because I mean a lot of projectors, they'll have an optical output, or they'll have a stereo analog connection or something, or some projectors even have speakers built in. But as far as the audio goes, it's just be aware that if you're plugging the source directly into the projector that you have, it'll be a mono analog signal coming out of there.
There you go. Ken is writing us on behalf of his cousin. Ken's cousin has an Epson Home Cinema 2250 projector. He's happy with it and was using it in a bright room for watching football games. But after about a year of usage, started to show a red tinted strip along the bottom of all the images. I've seen this before.
Example of this photo. There you go. That's good. I mean, good news in the fact that you know how to diagnose it. Yes.
Yeah. So he was hoping it was just something to do with the lamp, so we bought a replacement from a third-party seller. That did not help, so we bought another replacement lamp from Amazon, but the problem still persisted. Well, it's not the lamp.
There you go.
I mean, yeah. I can understand why you would think so, though. I can understand that, but that's not how lamps work. So do we have any idea what's causing this and whether it can be fixed? Would it be worth the cost of repair, or would we recommend simply buying a whole new projector? The max budget is around $1,000. It's the panel. It's the panel that's in there, and or the display. I don't know. Is this DLP or is this?
No, this will be LCD. It's
LCD,
Epson 2250, so it's three LCD panels in there.
Yeah. So something has gone amiss there, and it is broken. Is the technical term, and now it no longer works, and it will cost you more to fix it than it will be to replace it. So just
panel replacement is I mean, you're basically replacing the whole light engine of the projector other than the lamp.
So what you could do is buy the exact same projector and then take the cover off of it and then put your old cover back on it, and then now that's how you fixed it. So clearly that's not really fixing it. It's just buying a new projector.
Yeah, I mean,
but that is what it is. You're basically having to replace the entire guts of the thing.
Right. Yeah. I mean, once again, it's never a bad idea to just get in contact with Epson's customer service.
Sure.
Epson's customer service, very, very good. And this being only a year old, that shouldn't have happened. It's very possible that the manufacturer's warranty was only 1 year and you're past it, but I would contact them about this anyway, because Epson's pretty darn good about their customer service. They stand behind their products quite well, and if it's only been in use for a year, that shouldn't have happened that quickly.
Yeah, I agree.
So I would get in touch with them. There might be some, I can't make a promise on their behalf, of course, but there might be something they can do for your friend in this case. If this was, the 2250 has been around a while, so if this was 8 years old or something, I wouldn't expect anything, but if he's only owned it for a year, they might be willing to help you out there. So I would certainly get in touch with them.
Yeah, just a lot of people say, it's a brand new fill in the blank.
Sure.
Like, but it's not. I didn't ask you how long you've owned it. I've asked you how long been around. Oh, well, I got it used off of Craigslist. Okay,
that's right.
It's new to you does not mean new.
Yeah.
So yes.
So that is first and foremost. Do get in touch with, or tell your friend to get in touch with Epson, because it's worth your while to at least ask them about it. They aren't one of those companies that's going to completely brush you off or treat you really poorly. So that would be worth your while. But that all said, if they're like, sorry, we are past the manufacturer's warranty or whatever it is, likelihood is this is going to be, multiple hundreds of dollars to repair, which puts it into the category of it's very questionable if it's worth it. It'd probably be still a little bit cheaper than buying a whole new one, but I wouldn't expect it to be drastically cheaper. So some alternatives you could consider. BenQ's newest affordable DLP model, their HT2060, which is still 1080p, but it actually handles HDR signals. So that's something that the 2250 definitely couldn't do. It's not like it's really truly an HDR capable projector, but you can input 4K HDR signals into it and it will show the image somewhat correctly. But it's a really nice little unit. Those HT2060s from BenQ are a really nice projector, really solid color accuracy, at least for Rec 709 regular HD content. Surprisingly good contrast and black levels from a DLP projector. They're a really solid projector choice there. So those do go for $950. It is right up against that $1,000 budget, but I mention it because it's one of my favorites for the under $1,000 crowd. That as far as projectors go, like it's rare to find really good color accuracy, honestly, at that price point. And the BenQ HT2060 really nails that. So it's one of my favorites for that under price point. If you just wanted to go even cheaper and something that honestly compares quite nicely to that Epson 2250 and in all likelihood costs the same or less than the repair would cost if we're into that territory, Optima's HD 146X. It is 1080p straight up, just like the Epson 2250 is, but it's only $600 these days. And it is bright. It is sharp. The color accuracy is not the be-all, end-all. The contrast is not the be-all, end-all, but it's honestly very comparable to that 2250 that your friend already has. And $600, it's nigh impossible to beat it. So that's another one. Optima's HD 146X would be a very affordable replacement if it comes to that.
There you go. Mohsen. So we have pretty much succeeded in convincing Mohsen to go with the Denon receiver to replace this Yamaha RXV2 2085 in his blacked out theater. It was his own design and built with the help of a contractor. I don't remember trying to convince anybody to buy anything very specific, but whatever.
I mean, this is one of those things. He's just itching for an audio upgrade, and I'm like, some of this stuff is kind of questionable whether it's really going to be an upgrade, but you can get new features and all that stuff. And he was looking at an Anthem, which was actually more than he wanted to pay. So we were like, look, you can get all the things you were asking for, the new features you wanted from a nice Denon X6700H in particular. So we've almost convinced him at this point that that's the way he's going.
I don't want you to buy anything.
I know.
I take back everything I said that made you think you should buy something new.
I don't really think he needs to, but he's itching to do so. And if he's going to do it, then this is something that I think he'd be pretty happy with. Showing a couple of pictures he sent along of just the building process there. So yeah, this thing was torn down to the studs, fully insulated.
I bet it sounded better before he put the drywall up, though.
It was certainly less echoey before the drywall went up. That's for sure.
I bet if you had set up your system with just that insulation in the walls and no drywall, you've been like, man, this thing's awesome. You put the drywall up and go, this sucks.
Not particularly soundproof, but
no, not good for the rest of the house, but great for your room. So he asked, what are our thoughts on getting a X3800H plus a tone winner AD7300 amplifier, which together costs about the same as a Denon X6700H. They can't do the same number of channels.
Indeed.
So there's that. If you were looking for that, then I would. If you're looking for more speakers to put in here, I don't remember what he wanted. I think the easiest way to say it is, let's just say you replaced your Yamaha 2085 with a Denon X3800H. Yes.
Sound quality-wise, I would not expect one iota of difference.
Well,
other than
Odyssey sounding different than
YPOW.
Yes. Because there's a different target curve that they're going towards. Is the only audible difference, and you'll say, "Oh, well, Yamahas are this and Denons are that." Shut up! No, they're not. But anyways, go on.
That's the default target curve of the room correction. That's going to be one difference there, and then the truly objective difference is that your Yamaha 2085 stops at 9 speakers. He already has his 5.2.4 configuration. He has maxed that out. The 3800 can go to 11 speakers. It can power 9 speakers itself, but it can be expanded to go to 11 speakers. So he could add a third pair of overhead speakers to have top fronts, top middles, and top rears, because you can do that with the X3800H. You can go up to 5.4 subwoofers, 0.6 overhead speakers, or you could add surround backs, which we don't think you should do because of where your rear seats are placed in your theater, very close to the back wall, but those would be objectively different options you could do with the 3800H. But other than those two things, the 3800H, you can't add front wides. That's not an option. You can pay extra to have Dirac. So you have Odyssey comes with it. You have Dirac as an option. You can compare those to YPOW. That would be the difference. But are you going to, by default, just because you went from a Yamaha to Denon, here's some hugely significant difference? No. It's tough to say that would be a reason to do it. So then he's like, okay, the reason to do it would be I'm getting not just the new amplifier with the new type, or the new receiver with the new type of room correction, I'll also be getting this tone winner AD7300 7300 amplifier. This is actually 200, or they rated 180 watts times 7 all channels driven. The 300 watts is one channel driven, so they're kind of fudging the numbers a little bit on that there. This is Jade Designs, same as the OEM behind Emotiva. Mm-hmm. But it is lower cost, and there's been a few little corners cut, primarily in, this is some sussing it out just from specs and measurements and things like that, but it seems like they have pared back a little bit on the feedback circuitry. The signal-to-noise ratio is not quite as good as Emotiva's. The noise floor is not quite as good as Emotiva's. The damping factor is significantly lower than Emotiva's, all of which comes around to say, with your Klipsch speakers in your medium-sized room, this wouldn't necessarily be the amplifier I would point you towards. You wouldn't have too much trouble, because where this amplifier is weaker than its Emotiva counterpart is powering low impedance speakers in the bass. Low impedance speakers in the bass is where just on paper and in measurement, the tone winner doesn't have as much low noise, low distortion, ample current available to come out of its output as its Emotiva more expensive counterpart does. None of which you're going to need. You got bass management going on. You got very easy to drive speakers, but it's just like if you were going to get an amplifier, you don't need lots and lots of wattage. The reason to get an amplifier in your setup would be to get an even quieter noise floor than what you have with whatever AV receiver you're currently driving. So that would lead me to going with like a monoprice monolith amplifier for an exceedingly quiet noise floor, or spending half as much and getting an Outlaw audio, like a Model 5000X would be a fantastic choice. Really, really nice low noise floor and more power than you might suspect from its half price point versus the tone winner AD7300. So all of it is to say, I'm not like super gung-ho, because this is like you're spending still a lot of money for I don't know what. Adding the 10th and 11th speakers, just making the room correction switch. Maybe you'd consider that an upgrade, but maybe you wouldn't. It's not a given that you would. Whereas at least if you go to the 6700H, it's like, oh, you can do front wides, which you've never done before. You can do something genuinely different there going on with that. So that's
why
still
are the subwoofers on the same side of the room?
Oh yeah, that's coming up. We're gonna get to the subwoofers here.
Okay.
We got photos of that too. But yeah, so yeah, I'm very wishy-washy. Even though I love the X3800H, I love that model of receiver. I think it's a fantastic receiver.
I'm not hearing a whole lot of reason for you to do this.
No, this is a pretty lateral move, and I don't. To me, that just isn't the choice of amplifier. I'm sure you were like 700 watts times 300 watts times 7 for $1,500. Like wow, that I'm sure that made your eyes light up. And I'm here to tell you like it's not what you need. It's not really what you want in your setup.
Most people don't ever need anything more than 3 channels of amplification.
Sure.
I mean, that's what it comes down to. The 3 speakers at the front of your room are the furthest away from you by far, need the most power by far. And they're the only, you can usually get away with that. Very rarely are you so far away from your surrounds, your overheads, that you need to amplify them. And they're rarely loud enough that it really matters. So 3 channels of amplification, which you can easily get for $1,500 at a, that would be a upgrade. I used air quotes there.
Yes.
Upgrade to what you currently have. And God dang it, dude. How I know, okay, I understand that like I've got money. I would like to spend some of it on myself. And my home theater is where I like to spend my money. Mm-hmm. I get it. But don't find someplace else to spend the money. You know what I mean? Like I don't know what else to tell you.
Resistant to the 6700H.
Well, I mean, even then, I don't really
all the things you wanted to do.
I know. It's very silly. Anyways, so he managed to position one of the subwoofers at the back of the theater, which I saw, and then immediately criticized, while leaving one at the front. It's the first time he's tried having a pair of subwoofers across the room from one another, and naturally it means he is running YPOW again. We'll get ready to run it again. There's an option in his Yamaha subwoofer settings for the dual subwoofer outputs: left plus right, front plus rear, or dual mono, basic monaural, whatever. No. Which do you choose and why? So you want the dual mono one?
Yes, you certainly do.
Because basically the other ones are all like stereo. So think of it this way. The left and right, or front and rear. There's left and right, right? So left and right takes all the speakers, theoretically, on the left side of the room. And all of their bass that you're bass managing goes into there, plus the LFE. And then on the speakers on the right side of the room go into the second subwoofer, which would theoretically be placed on the right side of the room. And plus the LFE would all go into there.
Yep.
Okay. And front and back, same thing. So you've had one subwoofer from the front, one subwoofer from the back, like you do right now. Then all the back ones, I don't know where they draw that line. I guess the top middle is the line that they draw. I don't know what they do with the top middle speakers.
Your surrounds and surround backs, if you had them, their bass would only come out of the subwoofer at the back of the room.
Right, and everything else would come out of the front of the room. And you don't want any of that. You want all the bass to come out of both of them at the same time.
Yes, you do.
That's what you want.
Thankfully, the monaural times 2, the dual monaural, is an option, which makes it easy. You can continue to use the 2 subwoofer pre-outs that are on the back of your Yamaha and not have to worry about that. They are just putting out the exact same signal in mono. That is what we want. I can't possibly blame anyone for being confused because the description says front and rear. Select this option when 2 subwoofers are placed front and rear of the room. It's like, well, that's what I did. Isn't that the setting I want? No, we do not want the bass management between your speakers all separated out and some of the bass only going to the sub at the rear and some of the bass only going to sub at the front. But yes, what Tom undoubtedly noticed in the pictures is that you have a subwoofer that is at the back of your room, slightly to the right of center at the back of your room now, which is exactly where Leah and I suggested placing it when we first saw things there. But then you've kept the sub at the front of the room also slightly to the right. So both subwoofers are to the right of center. We actually want them diagonally across from each other. So you had the subwoofer that got moved to the back of the room. That used to be at the front of your room to the left of your center speaker. That's where we want the sub at the front of your room, which obviously it was physically possible to put a subwoofer there before. So I think it's because we've used that language like mirror placement, which is problematic, right? Like if you just put a mirror in the room, that what you've ended up with is what it would be. So that was probably confusing language on our part. We want them diagonally across from each other. We want a straight line from sub to sub to intersect the very middle of your room, if you think of it that way. So all we're saying is take the sub that is at the front of your room, currently to the right of your center speaker, and move it over to the left of your center speaker where there used to be a subwoofer there. And that's what we want you to do.
Yes, please, for the love of God. Put it on the other side of the room. It just, it's funny, and we know that you can do it, so it's not a big deal. So I'm not mocking you in any way, shape, or form. I don't want you to get that. Make sure that we're all clear on that one.
All of this, the language is not always clear.
It's not always clear, and we've said it so many times. And just because you haven't heard it doesn't mean we haven't said it. And just because we've said it so many times doesn't mean that we shouldn't say it correctly every single time. But it gets tedious to say diagonally opposite, diagonally opposed, explaining that every single time. Every once in a while we just mirror them, so one's across the room from each other. And maybe that's not as clear as it could be, but yes, if you had just taken your right subwoofer and just flicked it to the back of the room instead of taking the left subwoofer and flicked it to the back of the room on the right side, you had a 50-50 shot of getting it right, and
that's right.
It came up tails, son. Sorry about that. I don't think
this is the end of the world. I mean, it sounds like a strong possibility he's getting a new AV receiver, so he's definitely going to be running room correction again.
Yes.
So this is something that can most certainly be done.
Yes, and it's not a big deal. You'll fix it,
and
it'll be fine, and you're much closer. And I'll tell you what, just doing this is going to make more of a difference than buying a new receiver.
I know.
So this free thing that you're going to do is going to make more of a difference for the evenness of the bass in your room than all the rest of the stuff that the new AV receiver and amplifier are going to do for you.
And when the bass is improved noticeably, it very often feels like you got a speaker upgrade at the same time.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I cannot stress enough how little I think there's importance for you to buy a new AV receiver.
Yeah.
You should spend that $1,500. Get $500 to us and spend $1,000 on your wife. How about that?
Nice. It's one way.
Saving you money, son. Terry is in the process of designing an addition to, I almost said audition, I don't know why, to his house that will allow him to have a dedicated theater built from the ground up. As such, he's doing his best to use CEDIA's RP22 Immersive Audio Design Recommended Practices document to guide him in planning the layout for his seating and speakers with the goal of achieving level 3 or level 4. I don't have any idea what those things are, but that's okay.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you didn't go through all the RP22. I think that was an episode with Leah actually went. Oh, no, that was with when one of our other guest co-hosts was here. We went through RP22 in detail. That's right.
Yeah. Oh, well, how could I have missed out on that? But there are a couple of things he isn't sure about, and so he'd like our help and advice. The room is going to be 18 feet wide, and he's going to have 2 rows of seats. The width of each row will allow 4 feet of space from the outermost seats to the side walls, which falls within the level 3 guidelines of the RP22 document. That's perfectly. It's a good
nice distance.
Yeah.
Level 4 would have 5 feet. That's the difference.
I don't understand why we have to have levels here. It's just how about 3 feet is the minimum. Anything less than that is weird. Anything more than that is good. So
Yeah,
it's really, do we have to have level 4 and level 5? Whatever.
Marketing
level 5
and attempt
is
to have
infinity.
a common. They don't have a level 5. At one day they will, but supposedly level 4 is the maximum achievable. Level 3 is supposed to equal a studio experience, and level 4 is supposed to be the maximum achievable.
Whatever.
It's very much a marketing thing from CEDIA.
Double dumb. The ceiling height will be about 11 feet, and the second row's seats will be on a 16-inch riser. Since he is aiming for level 3 or level 4, I mean, if you were a real overachiever, you would aim for level 5 and create it yourself. That means going for 15 speaker channels in a 9.2.6 or 9.4.6 configuration. But with 2 rows of seats, it also means having 2 pairs of side surround speakers, which he intends to wire in series.
Yes, correct.
It's not exactly an array of side surround speakers on each side, but definitely isn't fully independent surround 1 and surround 2 speakers on each side. He isn't getting a turn off. So the RP22 guidelines say that for level 4, there shouldn't be any more than 50 horizontal degrees between any speakers on a given side. And for level 3, there shouldn't be any more than 60 degrees.
Yeah.
The document also shows that with an array of side surround speakers, the frontmost speaker on either side might actually go slightly in front of the front row of seats. So he's just trying to parse through all of that. What exactly would it mean for the precise placement of the 2 pairs of surround speakers to go along with his 2 rows of seats? Where exactly should he plan to install them as far as horizontal angles go?
Yeah,
actual Lord.
Yeah, I can't blame you that this is overcomplicated things to a highly unnecessary degree.
Just remember, the further back these speakers go, the more, by definition, diffuse they're going to sound. Okay. They're just going to be further away, and you're going to be more, it's just going to sound, and then there's 2 of them both playing. So could you place the front one in front of you slightly? Yeah. And the front of the front row slightly and behind the back row slightly. You could. I don't see any reason why you couldn't. But the problem is that the person who's sitting all the way on the edge is going to be about 4.5 feet from that speaker. Mm-hmm. And at that point, it starts to be less diffuse and more directional to that one specific speaker. So that's where I would say just place them sort of the way that each one place them as if it were a single surround for that row.
Right. Yeah. Ultimately, so there is nothing in the RP22 guidelines that disagrees with Dolby's white papers for Atmos at home, or Atmos in the cinema, or Atmos in the mixing studio for that matter. There's no disagreement there. So if you want, I would sort of say, because like RP22 is not a how-to guide. It is supposed to be a set of common language for installers to be able to use and to be able to communicate with manufacturers and clients so that they can all have this common language to agree on what they're going to do. That is what RP22 is trying to do. It isn't an actual how-to guide. So if you want a how-to guide of laying out your speakers, I would look up Dolby's white papers for Atmos at home and follow that, because that has like right down to the number, angles and placements and this many feet and all that type of stuff. But for the overarching idea, because what they basically come at is, if you had the maximum number of speakers that Atmos at home can support, which is 22.1.10 channels or something like that. It might even be 24, whatever it ends up being. It's you end up with 15 degrees more or less equally spaced for all the speakers going all the way around you. You take 15 degrees between each of them, and that's where they're going to be a speaker, except at the front of the room, they're a little bit closer together, and there's a little bit more space between the front left and right and the front wide speakers, but mathematically, it's basically every 15 degrees you've got a speaker. So RP22 is saying, okay, if we want to have like the maximum spatial resolution where we have equally spaced speakers, then, what's the maximum they should be apart to achieve, the very best results? And they landed on this 50 degrees separation, which basically amounts to, if your front, left, and right speakers are at the somewhat typical plus and minus 30 degrees spread in front of you, which is honestly a little bit wider than a lot of us would have in a home theater, but it just means that if you had them there, and then you had your surround speakers directly at 90 degrees to your sides, that would be a 60-degree spread. That would be the level 3 spread, right? They're saying, okay, you have front, left, to right at 30 degrees, you have your surrounds at 90 degrees, and there it is. There's your 60-degree spread. If we're saying that you can't have more than 50-degree spread in level 4, that means you have to have front wide speakers. That's really all it says. That's all we've amounted to. And it's saying, okay, instead of it being, your front, left, and right speakers are at 30 degrees, your front wide speakers are at 60 degrees, and your surround speakers are at 90 degrees, and all of them are separated by exactly 30 degrees, horizontal angle. We're allowing up to 50 because you could have your front, left, and right speakers at 22.5 degrees. You could have your front wide speakers at 60 degrees, and you could have your surround speakers at 100 degrees or 105 degrees or something like that. Like, that all still works for the perfect spatial resolution. But we're basically saying in level 4 that you have to have front wides, because otherwise you're going to have more than a 50-degree spread between some pair of speakers over to your left and some pair of speakers over to your right. That's all it amounts to. When it comes to where do your multiple side surround speakers go and how do they sometimes end up, with some of them slightly in front of you, that's mostly to do with the discrete setup, where if you did have a Trinnov and you had 3 discrete surround speakers. You have your surround speakers, and then you have surround 1 that's in front of those, and surround 2 that's behind those. That's where you could end up with, okay, maybe the surround 1 speakers that are actually in front of, they go in between your front wides and your surrounds. That's where the surround 1 speaker goes in the Trinnov setup. That could end up being slightly in front of your seats, because if your surround speaker is exactly at 90 degrees, then the surround 1 speaker is going to be 15 degrees in front of that and could be in front of your seats. For what you're talking about, just having 2 pairs of side surround speakers because you have 2 rows of seats, you're going to set them up exactly the way that Dolby would show them in their white paper, which is either 90 degrees to the side of each row of seats, or what I would recommend, which is slightly behind. I'd put them at like the 100-degree mark, but for both rows of seats, right? So you've got side surround speakers that are to the sides and slightly behind each row of seats. That's my final answer, but that's sort of the thinking of why does RP22 all written like that? Because they're covering a lot of different scenarios, including someone with a full Trinnov setup.
So he asked, what about the height of each pair of surround speakers? With this back row of seats on the riser, should the rearmost pair of surround speakers be physically higher than the frontmost pair? RP22 does say to elevate the surround speakers to give them a clear line of sight to every listener, just like we've always said to do. But should both pairs of surrounds be at the same height, and they're just a little above the heads of the back row, but quite far above the heads of the front row? And there's a bunch of pictures here.
Yeah, no, they cover this. They're pretty clear on it, and this would be the same as you'd see in Dolby's white papers as well, which is that so like you've got your seats are your back row of seats is 16 inches higher, and however distance back from you, that's going to create a slope angle. Yeah. The surround speakers get mounted on the sidewall at that same slope angle. So basically, it just means that, if the rear row surrounds are half a foot above the heads of the rear row listeners, then the front row surrounds are going to be a half a foot above the front row. It's the same distance above the heads. You're just following that same slope going up. So yeah, that's fairly clear in there. And then the surround back speakers also fall on that slope so that they're above everyone's heads at the back of the room there too.
Yeah. The problem you run into here is a difference of aesthetics and
sure.
Power, basically. So for aesthetics reasons, you're like, I don't want to have them on a slope. It looks weird, right? But when you're measuring, you are, because these speakers are wired together, they're both getting the same amount of power. So sure. you want them to be, if you want them to be like the same distance from the microphone, if that makes sense. So you run into this sort of issue of when one speaker is higher than the seats and the other one's lower than, is at the right level or whatever because of the height of the riser, you could run into issues there. I think either way, it's going to be 6 of one, half dozen of another, in my mind, as far as I know what they're recommending here. You're talking about a 16-inch riser. Yeah. Okay. You're not talking about drastic. You're not talking about huge amounts of seats, of rows of seats that are going up at a big angle, like you would see in a theater or maybe someplace that had like a different setup. you could just cheat it slightly, you know what I mean, and have them in a row, as far as I'm concerned, and I think you would be okay. You know, this is they're not going to be really even physically that far. What, 6 feet apart ish is where they're going to be. So with the 16-inch difference, you know, whatever, it's not going to be that big of a deal in my mind.
Yeah, and thing is, I would just say follow the Dolby white paper, because there is nothing in there that disagrees with the RP22. So if RP22 is confusing you, put it out of your mind and follow the Dolby white paper, because it is more specific on the numbers.
So he says, finally, for now, regarding the overhead speaker placement again, level 4 says no more than 50-degree elevation angle separation between any two overhead speakers, while level 3 says no more than 60 degrees. So where exactly should they go? I mean,
so this is the same thing as how level 4 with the floor level speakers basically demands that you have front wide speakers. This in level 4 basically demands that you have top middles, because if you look at the recommended elevation angles for top front speakers and top rear speakers, if you put them as close together front to back as they go in Dolby's recommended guidelines, that would be a 60-degree spread. They'd be 30 degrees in front of you and 30 degrees behind you. So basically, level 3 is saying, 4 overhead speakers, your typical 7.1.4 channel thing, that's okay. That's what we're going for. But level 4 is saying, no, 50 is the most. So even if you put them at the recommended 30 degrees in front of you and 30 degrees behind you, or my goodness, if you put them at the actual recommended 45 degrees in front of you elevation angle, 45 degrees behind you elevation angle, well then it's basically demanding in level 4 that you have top middles so that you aren't getting more than a 50-degree spread. That's really what it breaks down to. It's level 4 is demanding that you add more speakers. That's really all they did it in the form of giving you angles to work out, but that's the bottom line of what they're saying.
Yeah. Rob, not this Rob, different Rob. In fact, it's a different Rob than we were talking about before.
We have 2 Robs on here that aren't the host Robs, so there are 3 Robs in
3
this
total
week.
Robs. Too many Robs. Somebody needs to go by Robert around here. So Rob was a little confused to hear us say, and to link to Vincent Tio's HGTV test video saying that HDMI 2.1 AV receivers do not add latency to video game signals when passing them through. He was hoping we'd have an explanation for what he and others have observed, which is that using an Xbox Series X and having it output Atmos audio with the Xbox plugged directly into AV receiver rather than straight into a TV quite clearly results in additional input lag. He assumed the AV receiver must be the weakest link and was adding some milliseconds of delay in order to decode and process the Atmos audio and then sync it with the video signal. But is the added input lag just intrinsic to the Dolby Atmos signals, or is Xbox or to the Xbox itself somehow? Vincent's video did seem to show no additional input lag of the video signal itself whatsoever, but that wasn't within an active Dolby Atmos audio signal playing the same time. So this doesn't seem to be settled just yet. Can we offer any insights? I mean, we did say that if you have any sort of video processing going on with your AV receiver, and that includes just so that you can see the on-screen menu. Because remember, you have to enable the video processor or the video processing function within your AV receiver, even if you tell it to do no video processing. Even if you tell it to pass it through, you still have to. It still has to process it enough to put the on-screen menu on there. It has to do.
Yeah, the overlay menu that'll go away. You won't be able to see when the video is the volume is changing on screen. But that wasn't really the issue. This is he's saying it specifically. So basically, what this amounts to is you set your Xbox to output PCM audio, uncompressed PCM audio, and this doesn't happen. So it's when you're setting the Xbox to output Atmos audio. And
I would be absolutely shocked if there was any issues with Xbox and audio. I mean, they have been rock solid since day one. So to suggest, sir, suggest that there is an audio issue with an Xbox, you better be coming with receipts. You better be coming with some hardcore receipts to show that the Xbox is having any audio issues whatsoever.
Every single Xbox user ever having some kind of audio issue with their Xbox. Honestly, I do not blame the AV receiver in this. No, because this doesn't happen with things other than the Xbox. So the AV receiver is not the common denominator. When you set your Xbox to output Atmos, so you set your Xbox's audio output to bitstream, and then you choose Atmos as the bitstream format, now everything comes out of the Xbox as an Atmos bitstream.
Well, that
which
sounds a
means
lot like processing to me. I'm going to be honest with you.
The Xbox is processing everything behind the scenes there. Now, there is the option now to do the audio bypass, right? Which is that whatever the original signal was, that's what the Xbox output, and that's what you want to do.
Yes.
Because there are a ton of games that don't actually have Atmos audio. There's really only a handful of games that were authored with Atmos audio. So you don't want to use the bitstream set output and set that to Atmos, where now everything comes out in Atmos all the time and the Xbox is processing the audio prior to sending it to the AV receiver. You just want the pass through. You want the original, which might mean you're not getting Atmos a lot of the time. A lot of the content is not Atmos. I mean, if you want the most stable, rock solid, never screws up experience, you do what I have resorted to doing with my Xbox, and I just output stereo sound. Because even
bad.
even if I choose 5.1 or 7.1 uncompressed PCM, 7.1 isn't great because there's a ton of stuff that is actually only 5.1 originally, and now my surround back speakers, if I had them, would just sit there playing absolutely nothing ever. I can apply an up mixer to 7.1 PCM to put sound into my overhead speakers, but no sound will ever come from the surround backs because you were getting a 7.1 signal, it was just silent in the surround backs, or the crazy thing where sometimes it moved the surround sounds to the surround backs, and then the surrounds sit there silent and never play anything. But I mean, I've had plenty of problems where if I just set it to 5.1 PCM, my center channel still just disappears. It just stops playing until I, go to something else and come back, turn it off and back on again. It's so stupid. Stereo is the only stable audio output from the Xbox. It's absolutely ridiculous, but that's still the case. So this is not your AV receiver's fault. It's not adding the output lag. This is the Xbox's fault.
I just hate my. I mean, I do. It's such an abusive relationship I have with my Xbox. Like, it is so convenient, and it works really well. And it is a remarkably
powerful little computer for its price.
It's crazy. It's crazy how powerful the thing is, and how. To me, it's so useful, and then you just go, oh man, but what about this audio thing? Why can't it get the audio right? Like, how hard is it to get the audio right? And Xbox is like, I'm sorry, man. We're going to therapy.
I just have it output stereo, and I upmix everything.
It is
never fails.
So wrong.
Never fails.
Trevor. SVS introduced a new offering to their line of accessories, the SoundPath Ultra Bi-Wire speaker cable, $99 for 10 feet or $129 for 20 feet. They should have quadrupled these prices. They should be charging in fact, put a 10 in front. Right. Just add 1,000 to each one of these numbers is what they should do. So it should be a $10.99 or $11.29 is what it should be, as far as I'm concerned. Because if you're going to buy it, you deserve to pay for it. In their What Are the Benefits of Bi-Wiring section, they've posted some pretty flowery language along with claims that bi-wire speaker cables can lower impedance and intermodulation distortion, although they say right there the differences in both cases are so small that you probably won't actually hear them. So Trevor has come to ask us, is this a real thing? Is bi-wiring actually an upgrade the way SVS claims it is? That is not what they're claiming. They're claiming that it will do some things.
I mean, they have the word upgrade right there. They say a bi-wire speaker cable is an upgraded speaker cable. So
the cable itself is technically more complicated than a regular cable. That is an upgrade by definition. I mean, I am not going to disagree with that. It is dumb. And they kind of know it. And they don't kind of know it. They definitely know it.
Oh, they know it. Yeah.
But they're like, people are asking us for this thing.
Yes,
now, this is about the line in which I will still defend a company. When they will make something that clearly doesn't do anything, and they tell you you're not going to hear a difference. Yeah. And they don't really charge an excessive amount for it like they could. I will say okay. Right? When Empyrean Audio started selling super tweeters, I was like, you are freaking dead to me. Like, I do not want to recommend you anymore. And if I do recommend you, I'm going to say something about your super tweeters every single time I do recommend you. Because it's dumb and you guys are... I saw pictures from their Facebook feed of them showing somebody's system where they had super tweeters on their surround speakers. I'm like...
Yes. We want the exceedingly directional sound for our audience.
Yes. Anyways, so yes, I will still defend SVS right here. This is as far as I will go. I will not go any further than this. As Jean-Luc Picard said, this far, no farther.
That's right. Yeah, honestly, for me, just on a purely personal level, this toes over the line. This crosses the line, not drastically, not to the point that I'm going to say never buy an SVS subwoofer again. Certainly not to that point, but this just crosses the line to me. Not even for like I say, offering the by-wire cable as part of there. Nobody's forcing you to buy it. I don't really care. Go ahead and offer the by-wire cable. Like that's whatever. I'm fine with that. But it's just a bit of the language and the what are the benefits of buy-wire. I'm like, you reached. Like I kind of feel bad for the marketing person over at SVS who was given the task of trying to justify telling anyone to purchase
look
a
at how they're
by-wire
using
cable.
this. This is the first time I've ever read it. The result is often described as, which is the same as, allegedly.
I know.
It's reportedly hearsay. Like we're not going to say it, but somebody else might.
I don't even like that. I would just like them to say, like, you don't even need this explanation. It should just be like, we were asked by our customers to offer this, and here it is. Done. You don't need any marketing. Like I that's the part that crosses the line for me. And honestly, that's easily fixable. There's no reason they couldn't change the copy on their website to something I'd be perfectly fine with. But this slightly crosses the line for me. So that's just on the personal level. In terms of is by-wiring a real thing? There's a little bit of a history lesson here, right? Which I think is kind of fun to share. Which is that back in the day, there were, I mean, this is still somewhat true, but it's less true now. It's kind of hard to buy a really crappy speaker these days. You kind of have to search for one. But back in the day, it was really easy to buy a crappy two-way speaker where inside of there was either the world's crappiest crossover or very often no crossover at all. They just relied on the mechanical properties of the tweeter and the woofer to form a mechanical crossover between each other. And there were really crappy, poorly designed crossovers in quite a few speakers. And what some people with a modicum of electrical understanding realized was if you just took the speaker wire you already have and you split it so that you have two pairs of it now, you still one pair of speaker wire over at the amplifier end, but two pairs of speaker wire, you just split that wire at the speaker end, and then you disconnected the wires inside of your speaker and you just ran those speaker wires directly to the tweeter and directly to the woofer, but you put one inductor onto the wires that went between the speaker wire and the woofer, and you put one capacitor on the speaker wires that went between the speaker wire and the tweeter, you have just created a very inexpensive, very simple crossover that was better than a lot of exceedingly crappy or non-existent crossovers. In speakers back in the day, it was a cheap, easy solution to a real problem that a lot of people didn't even totally understand. But what happened was by-wiring became synonymous with better, and it stopped, and nobody remembered why it was being done in the first place anymore, and that has just continued on. Now, if you by-wire a speaker that has a good crossover in it, like you will find today in even really inexpensive speakers, they don't have these completely incompetent or non-existent crossovers anymore. If you by-wire it, you have done nothing. There is already, if it had two pairs of binding posts, there was already a jumper there. All you have done is created a longer jumper. There is zero functional difference. There is zero performance difference in by-wiring, but it goes all the way back to those really crappy crossovers in the day and this being a simple, inexpensive way to fix it yourself. And then it just, people forgot why they did it.
Yeah, it is just
don't buy these. Bottom line, don't buy these.
I would never buy these. Not in a million years. I would never recommend anybody buy them unless they lost the jumpers and they're too lazy to create their own.
Okay. You
wire.
Can't cut a piece of speaker wire that's 3 inches long. You can't do it.
Can't be done.
A whole bunch of money
Rob,
for this.
Can't be done. Brandon, Brandon's 13-year-old son has recently taken up an interest in vinyl and has started buying some albums, but he doesn't have a turntable to play them on. I think that's the perfect way to enjoy vinyl.
It's for the album art.
It's for the album art. That's what it's for.
Support. They actually make a profit that way.
And Brandon would like to get him one for Christmas. The thing is, all of his son's playback equipment, speakers, and headphones are Bluetooth only. So he went looking for turntables that can output Bluetooth, and he came across the Audio Technicas, and there's a whole bunch of them. The AT LP60X BT. There's the USB version of that same thing, and there's the 120 version of that thing.
That's right. And they go up and up in price, as you would imagine. As the names get longer, the prices get higher.
That's right. Looking around a bit at prices, the LP120 model is nearly twice the price of the LP60 model, so is it worth it? Is there some other model or brand entirely he should get instead? Is it a total waste to get turntables that output Bluetooth to begin with? What do we think you should get and why? I think you should get the cheapest one possible. Your son doesn't care. He's 13 years old. 13 years old? He's 13 years old.
Yeah.
Get the cheapest one possible. He's going to ruin it anyways.
Well, I mean, not only that, there's a potentially really good reason to get one of the LP60 models. So look, we can dispense quite quickly. The LP60X BT for Bluetooth, it does exactly what you've said is needed. It can output a Bluetooth signal. It also, on the back of it, it's a 3.5 millimeter stereo jack, and they include a stereo 3.5 millimeter to regular red and white RCA adapter cable in the box. But so you can hook it up analog. It has an internal phono preamp that you can manually deactivate if you want to. So if you are connecting the LP60, any of the LP60 variants, to a AV receiver that has a phono input, you can just flick the switch on the back to phono output and connect those red and white RCA cables, and it works that way. You can also plug it into anything with red and white line level inputs, and then you just flick it to line level instead of phono level, and it works that way, or you can output directly to Bluetooth. Then there is the LP60X BT USB version, which all it does is add a USB output.
Right.
So if you do, maybe it's not even your son, maybe it's you who would like to take some records, plug it into your computer and record them so you can digitize your records, right? Maybe you've got some records that are really rare and hard to come by, and rather than, just having to rely on them physically lasting, you can digitize them. It has a USB output. You can put it right into a computer. You can run something as simple as Audacity, and you can digitize your albums. That's what it would be for. But if you really don't need the USB input, then don't spend the money. Just get the regular LP60X Bluetooth. Now, the LP60 variants, they are fully automatic turntables. You push the button and the platter starts spinning. You push another button and the needle picks itself up, moves itself over to the edge of the record, puts itself down, and the record plays. And when you want to stop, you press the stop button and the needle rises and it moves out of the way and it comes back down and the platter stops spinning. It is as dead simple to use as it can possibly be, and I think that is the reason to get it over the LP120 in this case for your son. The LP120, I love it. It's a fantastic turntable, but it is completely manual. So if you want granular control over the speed of that platter, you have it. There's a slider on there. You can manually adjust it. It has these little dots on there and a light that goes on there so you can time it with a slow motion camera to get it down to like fractions of a second accuracy. And it's also great for DJs. It's a direct drive platter that you can manually jog it forward and backward without damaging anything. It's a great choice for DJs. It's a great choice for really granular manual control, but it is fully manual. You have to manually pick up the needle with your finger, position it over where you want it to play on the record, and manually drop it down. And I don't really think that's what you're after. So all of that additional granular manual control is why it costs more. But I actually think the LP60 is not just the less expensive choice. I think it is the better choice in this instance. So can't argue with that. It costs less, and I think it's the better choice, and it's a great record player. The only other thing I wanted to mention about the AT-LP60, it is belt-driven, and when they ship it in the box, the belt is not completely on the gears that it needs to be. They ship it that way so that nothing gets stretched or broken or misaligned during shipping. And there are clear instructions that come in the box. There's like a big yellow tag when you first open it that says you have to align things this way, and they show you how to do it. tons of people ignore that, and then they go on Amazon and say, this record player doesn't work out of the box. It's not plug and play. It's like, yeah, look at the big yellow warning label and this won't happen to you. But I have to say it because it's not complicated to set it up, but you do need to set it up. It is not literally plug and play. But I would absolutely recommend an Audio-Technica turntable to you. I would absolutely recommend the LP60 XBT. I wholeheartedly recommend it, and I think you stumbled onto the correct choice 100%.
There you go. Yeah, Andrew's done some turntable reviews over at AV Gadgets that you can look up, but I agree with Rob. I think that looking at the most of the other turntables I think that are out there that people like recommend, they are essentially Audio-Technica turntables.
They're rebadged Audio-Technica very often.
So it's not that big of a deal. Anyways,
and if your son already has Bluetooth headphones he likes, he already has Bluetooth speaker in his room that he likes, there is nothing wrong with outputting directly from the turntable via Bluetooth. I mean, yeah, that's fantastic that you can do that. It's so much nicer to be able to do that, isn't it? Yeah. So at a price that really doesn't break the bank. So gung-ho about that one. Yeah.
Chris recently built himself a new gaming PC. It's AMD based using a Ryzen 7 what?
Ryzen 7 series, 7700X.
That's a lot of sevens with a space in the middle of them, which is stupid. CPU with a Radeon RX 7800, another 7, XT GPU. As it turns out, it draws quite a bit of power. He already owned the APC BE600M1 battery backup, which is rated at 600 VA, 330 watts. From the battery with his PC monitor and speakers plugged into it, it beeps an alert even when he's only playing an indie game that isn't pushing his new PC to its limits. Speaking of which, my APC backup is, I think the battery's dying on it. So I have to do something about that. Doing some reading on his own, it seems he needs a battery backup with high capacity. Is that true? Would a 1500 VA unit stop the beeping alert from happening? His wife isn't too keen to spend the extra money, but something around $200 or less could be managed. Also, do we think he could sell his BE600 to get some money back and put towards the new unit? What do we recommend? I would not buy. I don't buy anything from people that has a battery involved in it because I just assume that battery is bad or going bad.
Cannot picture the abode where you couldn't make use of that battery backup in another room for something else. I mean, surely you have a cable box
plug
or
it
a game
into your
system
router at the very least.
Yes,
you know?
Yeah, for sure.
Your modem/router. That's what mine does, and then your internet connection doesn't go down the minute that the power goes out.
But yeah, I mean, it sounds like either he built this PC or built it himself. He said it right there.
Built it. Yeah.
So you know what wattage of power supply you put into that PC. I'm betting based on what you did, it's probably 1,000-watt power supply because those are fairly typical, and it doesn't really make sense to step down to the 900 or the 800. But it might be even more than that. But it's not that your PC is going to be actually drawing 1,000 watts all the time. It definitely is not.
Right.
But you do want a battery backup that, like the one that can deliver 330 watts, that's not enough for a 1,000-watt power supply. Furthermore, PC power supplies these days, they are definitely the type that don't always interact well with the stepped approximation of a sine wave that most battery backups put out. They do like the pure sine wave going out of there to avoid any sort of ripples and blips in the power as it's going along. So all of that is to say, this is a case where I do think it makes sense to get yourself a higher capacity, higher wattage battery backup unit. One with a pure sine wave output would be my choice. And I'm unfortunately at this moment going to suggest a model that's a little bit more expensive than your $200 budget, but $225 or $245. So we're not way out of the ballpark here. The APC BR1350 MS is probably my favorite one to recommend. It can genuinely output on a continuous basis like 800 watts of power, which should not be any sort of a problem for what you're talking about. That's the $225 unit is the BR1350 MS. Rare that you're going to have any issues using that with any sort of setup. If you do want one that is rated for a full 1500 volt amps and the full 950 watts continuous, these are getting a little bit hard to find because they have been discontinued as a model that APC is manufacturing, but they still have their BGM 1500 from APC available at Amazon, at least as we're speaking, for $245. It actually has nice aesthetics too. It goes along great with any sort of gaming setup. So you might want to snatch one of those up. I know it's a bit more than you wanted to pay, but it really does have all the features you want. And I do want you to have battery backup on your nice new computer that you built. So yeah, this is a case where it makes sense to upgrade. And rather than selling, I'm certain you can find a room and a usage for what you already have in the BE600.
Yes. Julian. We've discussed previously Julian's plans for his conversion of his 8-foot by 10-foot home office into a one-man theater using his Marantz Cinema 40 AV receiver and complement of KEF speakers. We also helped him improve the sound in his lounge, so we'd like to hear a bit more advice for us when it comes to his home office setup. So only going to be one seat, so that he actually gain any benefit from more than one subwoofer. He has an SVS 3000 micro and a KEF KC62 on hand. Both are dual opposed driver designs with strong output down to 32 Hertz. The 3000 micro is about 8 dB quieter down at 20 Hertz, while the KC62 is about 10 dB quieter at 20 Hertz. He also has an old PMC TLE1 sub, which is a dual 6.5-inch driver design, both firing forward, and a narrow width but quite tall and deep cabinet with a transmission line design. Specs claim it can remain linear down to 22 Hertz, but there aren't any easy to find measurements online to back up that claim. At the moment, he's got both the SVS and KEF subs in the office, but he's also typically has his office open to the dining room behind it, basically tripling the cubic footage of air he's dealing with. If the home office is set up to be more of a dedicated one-man theater space, could he use any or all of these 3 subwoofers in there? Does one of them stand out as the very best? And if he uses 2 or all 3 in there, what would he be gaining? Uniformity across multiple seats is of no concern, so would it just be additional headroom? Would the quality of the sound somehow be improved? So the thing that I would be worried about in this sort of setup, as far as bass is concerned, is the vast swings that you can get between peaks and nulls at any given spot in your room.
Yeah.
So you say to yourself, I only have one seat I care about, therefore I can EQ the crap out of whatever sub I put in here so that it can be linear at my seat. So the idea then would be that you would get a single subwoofer, you would place it so that it would have as few or as shallow of nulls as possible at your seat.
No outright nulls and as little in the way of big dips as you can possibly get. Some humps are mostly
fine.
Okay.
Would be fine.
Yeah, you can tame those down.
Right.
But yeah, so this is like, subwoofer crawl type of territory or just trial and error. But in such a small room, you probably have somewhat limited placement, even though these are very physically compact little subwoofers, so that helps. But you might not have every placement option available open to you. So yeah, that is the trade-off of one seat, one sub is that, if you have essentially limitless placement options and the ability to equalize that subwoofer, which of course you do with your Marantz receiver, like you can make that work. One sub, one seat, you can make that work pretty darn well. But if you run into any sort of placement limitations, that's where having 2 subwoofers in the room, even when it's just a single seat that you care about, can still help you out. It's still about the ability to compensate for the unavoidable dips or nulls that one subwoofer is producing by having a second subwoofer across the room from it. That's the real benefit. So yeah, we're not so worried about a wide seating area having uniformity, but we're still worried about potentially, due to placement restrictions, not being able to achieve the results at the one seat that we really, really want. So given that you already have the subwoofers on hand, that you already own them, and that you have 2 of them that are very physically compact and can definitely do this, and the KC62 and the 3000 micro are not so vastly different in their performance and extension that I'm worried about using them as a pair together. I don't know that third subwoofer that you have well enough to know whether it really is.
We're in the same boat here. All 3 of us are in the same boat. We have no idea what that sub can do, and without some sort of objective measurements, I wouldn't even trust to pair it with one of the other ones because I don't know if it's way better, way worse, or I don't know where it would fall within that range.
Yeah, technically we know based on measurements that we trust that the 3000 micro is ever so slightly deeper in its extension than your KEF, but like I say, they're close enough that I wouldn't have any problem using them together. So I would still, for my purposes, I will basically never have a subwoofer that doesn't have a subwoofer setup that doesn't use dual subs.
Yeah.
Even when I'm the only listener that I care about, I'm pretty much never not going to have at least dual subwoofers in there. That's where I've landed on that. So if that's of any meaning to you, then that's still what I would recommend for you.
Yeah. So
because we're not actually asking to buy anything.
Right.
That helps.
In your case, it's something different. But if it weren't you, if it were somebody else setting up something in a small room, even with infinite placement options for your subwoofer, like your single subwoofer. What you're really, I mean, you really have to be very, very careful to make sure that you don't have a big suck out at any one frequency, because then there is nothing you can do about it. There's nothing, like with that single subwoofer, you can't EQ that up. Remember, nulls are cancellation in sound waves, so no matter how much louder you play it, it just cancels itself out still. So you have to move the sub so that it is in a place where there is no real cancellation at the one seat you're worried about. And that's not as easy as you think. Are you
sitting with your head in a vice? You know, do you slouch over to the side sometimes?
You'd be surprised how dramatically different the bass can be from one seat to another. And I'm not talking like a whole chairs. I'm talking like I lean to the side a little bit, and suddenly and it can be that dramatic. It doesn't always be, but it can be that dramatic. So putting those two subs in there, I mean, what is the cost of your time? And I'm not talking about you because you've already got the subs, but to everybody else that's listening, you know, what is the cost of your time? Because this not only is this going to be difficult to find the right placement in there, because there is no answer. There's no like, here's the dimensions of my room, here's where I put the sub, because it doesn't take into account everything else that's in your room that could be absorbing or reflecting sound. So therefore you have to, I mean, it's more than just that. So you have to trial and error this thing, and that could take you who knows how long to figure it out. And that's the cost of your time. So the cost of your time, the cost of your aggravation, the cost of your frustration, the cost of your, you know, going on Reddit and saying that the subwoofer's no good because it produces no bass, and everybody yelling at you about it because it definitely does, and it's just where you sat in your stupid small room. You know, that makes all the difference. You know, all those costs together is more than the cost of the actual buying the second sub and setting it up and going, wow, this sounds really good. So yes,
it's the evening out of the uniformity and the frequency response, because I mean, you do help the frequency response by having more than one subwoofer, and having them positioned across the room from each other. So it's not really that we're worried about headroom. You got plenty of headroom no matter what. We're not worried about the quality of the sound changing in some way, but it is the quality of the sound in the sense that the whole thing becomes much easier to manage, and you don't have that weird effect where sometimes even if you have a big hump that you are EQing, it's like, you move from your left armrest to your right armrest, and the sound changes quite dramatically. So I like the dual subwoofer setup no matter what.
Yeah. Lior asks, does it make sense to buy an Epson 6050 UB in December 2023? He wants a projector that can do HDR. He would like to get one of the native 4K resolution Sony or JVC models, sure, but those are too expensive for his budget. So we had to look at yeah, really. So he had to look at the next rung down, which would be the Epson LS 12,000 or 11,000. They're only $1,000 apart. But the older 6050 UB or the TW 9400, since he's in Europe, is still around. He'd like to know if we think spending less than half as much would be too large of a sacrifice. He is aware that the 6050 UB, I'm just going to use the nomenclature for the United States, tops out at accepting a 4K 60 signal, not the 4K 120 like the LS 12,000. He's not a high-end gamer, so he doesn't really care. He is aware of the TW 9400 or the 6050 is a lamp-based, while the LS 12,000 is laser-based. He knows from his prior projector usage experience that the lamp will last him several years before it needs to be replaced. And the difference in price will obviously cover multiple lamp replacements if need be. He knows that 6500 does not have, or 6050 does not do HDR10 Plus or Dolby Vision. No, very few do Dolby Vision, and that it does not have frame-by-frame dynamic tone mapping, but neither does the LS 12,000. So what is he missing here? Is the lack of frame-by-frame dynamic tone mapping significant enough to say he ought to say JVC or bust, or he'll be projecting on the 106-inch screen, sitting about 10 feet away. The 6050 only wobbles its panels twice per frame when showing 4K signals, not 4 times like the LS 12,000. He's seen regular 1080p versus 4K as scene distance, and personally thought it was rather meaningless for movies. So, is that it? Is it really okay to buy the much older projector and save a whole bunch of money? I'm always about saving a whole bunch of money. I'll be honest with you. Just in general, I'm pro saving money when it comes to these purchases. So the things you got to ask yourself are, what is this? And you've done this. What does the 12,000 do that the 6050 doesn't do?
That's right.
that would in some way make it worth your time and your energy to get that and the money. I mean, really, which is how we value our time and energy. To buy the 12,000 over the 6050, and you've identified a lot of the things that can be done, and the dynamic tone mapping makes a big difference. It absolutely does.
But the LS12000 doesn't offer that. That's going all the way up to a JVC, whole different price class.
So what benefits are you really going to get here? I mean, are you going to see the difference? And if you are you going to experience that difference? I don't know. I if it were me, I would be leaning very heavily towards that 6050, but that's just me.
The 6050 UB is a fantastic projector.
No doubt.
It hasn't stopped being a fantastic projector just because newer projectors that can do 4K 120 and newer projectors that can do frame-by-frame dynamic tone mapping, those have come out. They've offered those improvements. Those are objective improvements, but it doesn't mean the 6050 UB stopped being a really, really good projector. And given where the price points are these days, I think that makes all the sense in the world. I don't see any reason in your case that you ought to spend more. The fact that it's an older projector doesn't mean that it's bad or outdated in this case. Yeah, you just can't do 4K 120, really, and who cares? You're not a high-end gamer. And in fact, most games these days, even the ones that say they can support it, they can't really. We're stopping at 4K 60 for the most part anyway. So, yeah, I say go for it.
But it's a bigger number, Rob. It's a bigger number, and the bigger number must be better by definition. That's why we need 16K.
Oh, don't we, though? We need 16K. We need 6G because 5G has made such a difference in our lives. Couldn't possibly live without the 5G on my phone.
My parents in 5G, and my parents are sliding down the QAnon slope
lovely.
At an increasing rate. And they started talking about 5G the other day and trying to understand. I was like, I didn't even just let it go. I personally turned 5G off on my phone
because it drained your battery.
It kills my battery so fast. And I'm like, so what happened was I noticed my battery was dying like crazy. And 5G is great if you're gaming on your phone or you're streaming stuff and stuff like that, which I almost never do. I don't play games on my phone. I haven't in years now, and I very rarely stream anything that I care enough about that the little buffering isn't going to bother me. And usually I'm doing it over Wi-Fi anyway, so it doesn't make any difference. And the 5G was killing my phone, so I turned it off. Well, I went and my battery expanded. I think I talked about this on the podcast a while back. And I took it and I got the battery replaced. Well, it resets your phone pretty much. And all of a sudden, I actually called them. I'm like, dude, but this battery's not lasting for crap. You can put a new battery in here. They're like, well, we got a 1-year warranty. You can bring it back and we'll blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay. And I was like, well, let me leave with it for another week. And I remembered, that 5G thing. I went back and checked it. Sure enough, the 5G was turned back on. So I turned it off again. Suddenly my battery lasts twice as long. So yes. Yeah, the bigger number, Rob, is better.
I'm still shocked that people aren't freaking out over the fact that 5G uses, 5G high bandwidth, high frequency, uses microwaves.
Ooh.
That's what they are. They're microwaves. Now, they very wisely in the marketing changed that to millimeter waves because those are how long the wavelengths actually are. They're actually millimeters long, so it's not incorrect to call them millimeter waves. But in terms of what we always called them traditionally in the electromagnetic spectrum,
luckily
they're microwaves.
The QAnon
My
crowd
goodness,
has not picked up on that. Not very scientifically.
That's
literate.
what I mean. How has that? How have they not been freaking out about? We're all being cooked by microwaves.
The sun's been cooking us for years. They don't seem to care about that, but that's all right. So we're still on whatever his name is because I forgot. Lior. His HDMI cables are old, including the 30-foot run from his AV receiver to his projector. If he gets the TW9400 or the 6050 UB, which tops out at HDMI 2.0, not 2.1, is it fine to use a non-fiber optic 18 gigabits per second premium high-speed HDMI cable, or should you go with the fiber optic 48 gigabits per second ultra high-speed cable at this point? If you are changing cables, just get the better one. Just get the most recent. Listen, I'm all about saving money. I just said that. You know what I care more about saving than money is my frickin' time, and I don't want to change this cable twice. So just change it once, and that's the end of that.
Yeah, I mean, given the price of like those in-wall rated RUI Pro ultra high-speed fiber optic, they aren't breaking the bank. So I would probably do that. That honestly, I probably would at this point.
I mean, my dude. If it were like $1,000 difference, I could see arguing about this, but it's not. It's not worth it. We'll do one more, then we'll be done.
Okay.
Vince is considering a speaker upgrade or at least a change of speakers. I approve. Next question. Okay, listen, I don't even know what he has yet. So he currently has an ELAC Debut 2.0 center, then the pair of ELAC Unify UF5 towers for his front, left, and right speakers are powered by Marantz SR7015 receiver. Well, I don't have dyslexia, but sometimes my brain thinks I do.
We're also 2 hours into this, so it's all right. I start flubbing words too.
He figures he will addition a pair of SVS Ultra bookshelf speakers no matter what. It's free two-way shipping, so why not, right? Exactly. He'd also like to addition some Ascend Sierra 2 EX bookshelf speakers. He would have to pay some shipping if he decides to return those. One other wrinkle is that the physical space for a center speaker is very limited. The ELAC Debut 2.0 center just fits, but all SVS center speaker models would be physically too large. Ascend Sierra Duo LCR would physically fit just fine. So Ascend across all three front speakers remains an option, although they might not literally be identical speakers, which is just fine too. He'd like to know if we think either would provide a noticeable improvement over his ELAC speakers. He'd also like to hear about Rob's decision process and how and why he ended up going with Ascend Sierra speakers. Why did Rob have, what did he have before the Ascends, and what did he compare them to before deciding? Lastly, is there any scenario where you think it makes sense to keep his ELAC Debut 2.0 center while swapping out the front, left, and right speakers? He kind of have to just for physical size reasons if he went with SVS. Let me tell you this right now, first of all. I have had people in my home theater who own ELAC speakers, and I have the Ultras. Yep. And they have said that if they were going to upgrade their speakers, they would immediately that would be what they would buy. They would buy the Ultras. They consider them from here. Now I know, and you know, that the room makes a big difference here.
Sure does.
I do know that this person who has heard both of these speakers in these two different rooms, their room is also treated. So it is not as treated as mine, but it is still treated more than most theaters. And it's at least more of an apples to apples comparison that you could do between two different rooms. That being said, buy the Ascend. Okay. Just first of all, do not try to make, and I am okay with missing and matching center speakers with left and right speakers. For the most part, I think that you can, if you have a decent center speaker, it's going to pair pretty well. I have experienced mismatched center and front, left, and rights. Sometimes it's because the front, left, and rights are not as linear and accurate as the center. Sometimes it's because the center sucked, and which has also happened. But generally speaking, it can happen. If you have a good quality center speaker, it is going to be less noticeable than you think it will be. But in your case, both of these speakers would be improvements over the ELACs just generally speaking. I just think they're going to be better speakers. I don't think that either one of them, if you put them like side by side, you would have a preference for one versus the other, but that you would prefer either one over what you currently have. Therefore, just go ahead and get the one that has a center that you can shove in there.
Sure. I mean, it's not only that, it's that if there is a speaker that I would want to upgrade most in your setup, it's your center.
Center, right.
Because the Debut 2.0 series, I love them as a value pick, right? For the cost that they're charging, a lot of other speakers at that same price point are not matching up to the sound quality that they deliver. But from my experience of them, they definitely have a high frequency roll off, which for speakers of that price class makes a lot of sense to design them that way, because either you're trying to make a tweeter that isn't really that capable at that price point play higher than it really can without starting to create some nasty distortion, and also it's very often beneficial to have a really wide, even dispersion from your speaker. When you roll off the high frequencies, it's easier to do that, at that price point. That's what a lot of people are looking for. But that is going to be the most audible difference I would expect anyone to hear in going from a Debut 2.0 center to an SVS center or to an Ascend center. Yeah. I think you will. I would think that you would notice the difference in the treble. That's one of those things where I could be proven wrong, but I mean, I would be a little surprised, honestly, for if you're someone who cares about sound and listens critically and that, for you to not notice any difference in the treble whatsoever would surprise me a little bit. That's a real and very measurable and demonstrable difference that's going on there, whether objectively or subjectively. So I do think that it's possible to upgrade that center speaker in a worthwhile and audible way. And either of those choices, I agree, would do it. I mean, he asked about me specifically, why did I settle on Ascend Sierra speakers with those RAL ribbon tweeters? So I was coming from considerably less expensive speakers before that. I was coming from Energy speakers, their Reference Connoisseur series, which are still nice speakers. I still have those speakers. And I had Axiom speakers back when they were nice and affordably priced. And those are still good speakers. I don't have those ones anymore, but they remain good speakers, but the price on Axiom speakers has gone way up. So I was looking for something for my theater setup that were going to be like my forever speakers, right? I was willing to spend considerably more money, and I wanted something that I considered to be not just an audible upgrade, but something that was really going to last me a long time. I did quite a bit of auditioning. I was quite close to possibly going with Revel speakers, which I think I still would be very happy if I had. I was really close to going with Focal speakers.
And again, you would have been probably happy.
I would have been very, very happy with those. But I did get a chance to hear just a pair of, it was the Towers, because those came out first with those RAL ribbon tweeters, and just got, just in a casual setting. It wasn't any sort of scientifically rigorous comparison or anything like that. But I heard those and I was like, oh, what I loved most about the Focal speakers in particular, and that was when they had their beryllium tweeters. It was the what was the name of those? I forget. It's a discontinued series at this point, but it had the beryllium tweeters in them. And it's the thing that I've said, I don't know exactly what the objective measurement that corresponds to the experience really is. I tend to chalk it up to transient response in the tweeter, because that is sort of the one objective measurement that I can point to in the speakers that give me this experience, where I can see it in some sort of measurement, is in the fastness of the transient response. But it's that just uncanny sense of realism where for whatever reason, your brain just sort of goes, oh, that's not a speaker anymore. That's just a real sound that happened. And it's tough to quantify. It's a really tricky thing to quantify. But I got that experience, listening to the it's gone over my head here. Focal speakers. I got that experience there, and then I had that experience with the Ascend Sierra RAL speakers as well. And the Ascend Sierra RAL speakers were like less than half the price. And so once I got that, and then I looked into the company a bit more, and I just liked what they were doing with their bamboo cabinets. Whether that's a performance reason was sort of beside the point. I just loved that they were using that laminated bamboo cabinet.
I love those cabinets too.
Yeah. I love the looks of them. And then conversing via email with David Fabricant and all the knowledge that he just freely shared he was responding to emails at 2:30 in the morning. We're both on the West Coast, because that's like the only time he has, and I don't know when that man ever sleeps. But he was excited about it. And then I was saying, I actually had this physical restraint in my center speaker. I needed a shallower depth than basically anything I was finding. One of the reasons I was looking at Focal is they had a model that was really meant to be an in-wall or on-wall speaker, and I needed that shallow depth to go in the setup that I was planning at the time. And he was like, he's like, I'm kind of geared up about designing a speaker just for you. And it's like, I was like, okay, well, is that going to triple or quadruple the cost, which would have been reasonable for a one-off speaker that was not an existing cabinet design? He's like, I'll have to upcharge a little. He charged me like $350 extra on like a $1,700 speaker. I was like, okay, let's just do it. Because compared to the price of getting an entire Focal setup, I was having thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars in getting the performance that I wanted.
That's guy math right there.
Sure.
Basically, it was free.
Right. But, it was that experience. It was that very tough to quantify, very hard to line up with any objective measurement, but that uncanny sense of realism where it just many times depends greatly on the recording and the room that you're listening in. But sometimes there are speakers you're listening to where you're just never completely fooled into, that was always coming from speakers, and I'm aware of that. Whereas sometimes it's like, your cat or your dog perks up their ears in that weird way that they do sometimes because a sound came out that was like, to them it was real, right? Most of the time your cat or dog's sitting there, the TV's going, and they don't care. They're napping away or whatever, and then sometimes something just makes them wig out, and we have that reaction sometimes too, and it's tough to quantify and explain, but the Sierras do that for me. So that's how I landed on those. It was a combination of price and service and availability and looks and liking the cabinets and liking the company, and then having that sound quality I was after at a price that was, was saving me thousands of dollars. So that's how I ended up there. I think you would like them too. And I would say, if you are worried at all about having 3 completely matching speakers, the dual LCRs are LCRs. You can have 3 of those perfectly matching front ported speakers going across the front of your stage, no difference in speaker whatsoever, and that would absolutely work out for you.
Except one will be at a different angle. One will be. They still won't sound. They still won't sound identical. If you actually play them, they will still not sound identical.
You could put all 3 horizontal. It'll work.
I like to see somebody do that. Nobody's going to do it. They're going to put the side ones vertical. All right. Who do we have left?
We have left on our list Jeff and Frank and Nina, which thankfully being Christmas time and there was some purchasing decisions, I did email them back because I was like, there's no way we're making it to those questions this week. Mm-hmm. So we're not leaving them completely hanging for Christmas, but we'll still answer on the podcast because it is fun for other people to hear the answers too. They might have the same questions.
There you go. I want to thank our listeners of the week. We want to thank Andrew and Jeff for going to avrant.com and clicking on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link, as well as our 134 patrons over at patreon.com, including Ken.
Yes, indeed. Andrew and Jeff, thank you so much for those PayPal donations. Really appreciate your financial support via PayPal, and patreon.com/AVRant podcast is where you can go to sign up to make an automatic monthly donation. So big thanks to our 134 patrons over there. Ken, thank you for being one of them.
We also want to thank those who sent us notes of gratitude, including Greg, Art, Ken, Mohsen, Terry, Brandon, Chris, Julian, Vince, Rob, not the same Rob that we answered the question from, Jeff, and Frank and Nina. Thank you for thanking us.
Yes, I'll say the names one more time so they came from my lips as well. Greg, Art, Ken, Mohsen, Terry, Brandon, Chris, Julian, Vince, Rob, Jeff, Frank, and Nina. Thank you all so much for your notes of gratitude and encouragement. They are very much appreciated. And a big thank you to everybody who continues to listen and send in your questions.
For AVRant, I'm Tom Andrew.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.
Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AVRant.
Now go out and listen to something.